Evening, everyone, and welcome to Wednesday, June 7th, 2023, the SFO Community Roundtable meeting. I would like to call this meeting to order of the Wednesday, June 7th, 2023, SFO Airport Community Roundtable at 7:06 p.m. We are meeting in hybrid session, both in person at the David Chitwoody Community Room in Melbury and remotely via Zoom. Joining us today are staff to the Roundtable, Kathleen Wentworth, Roundtable Coordinator, Angela Montes, Roundtable Administrative Secretary, Jean Reindell, Aviation Technical Consultant from HMMH. And now I turn it over to Ms. Wentworth to tell us who else is with us that should be recognized.
We have from the FAA, Fabiola Garcia, Deputy Regional Administrator. From San Francisco, we have Bert Ganong, Aircraft Noise Office Manager, and also his colleague Annalise Tang, who's helping us at the welcome table. Thank you. I don't see anyone else in person. Angela, do you see online people that should be recognized?
Yes, and lastly, in person, we do have Public Information Officer Doug Yakel from the airport, and from online from SFO, we do have Paul Hanna and Christian Valdez on the SFO GBAS team.
Okay, thank you, Angela and Kathleen. As a reminder, tonight's meeting will have, again, hybrid access with members attending in person, and the public welcome to attend in person or remotely. For those attending remotely, we continue to use the enhanced Zoom features, which will periodically screen share the names of the attendees. The list of names will display the name, but not the email address, entered by each person when signing into the Zoom meeting. Moving on to roll call, Ms. Wentworth, would you please go ahead and take the roll call?
City and County of San Francisco Board of Supervisors. City and County of San Francisco Mayor's Office. City and County of San Francisco Airport Commission.
Ivar Sadler.
San Mateo County Board of Supervisors.
Dave Pine.
CCAG Airport Land Use Commission. Town of Atherton.
Stacy Holland.
City of Belmont.
Robin Pang, Megan Ayers.
City of Brisbane.
Terry O'Connell.
City of Burlingame.
Ricardo Ortiz.
Town of Colma.
John Goodwin.
City of Daly City. City of East Palo Alto. City of Foster City.
Sam Hindy.
City of Half Moon Bay. Town of Hillsborough.
Al Royce.
City of Menlo Park. City of Millbrae.
Ann Schneider.
City of Pacifica.
Christine Bowles.
Town of Portola Valley.
Gina Pasco.
City of Redwood City.
Kaya Aiken.
City of San Bruno.
Sandy Alvarez.
City of San Carlos.
Pranita Venkatesh.
City of San Mateo. City of South San Francisco. Town of Woodside.
So we
We
have
have
a
a
quorum.
quorum.
Thank you, Kathleen, and thank you everyone for attending. Before we start, I just want a little bit housekeeping item, which is restroom. Get out of the hall this way. To your right, you'll find your restroom if you need to. Other things, we have very important topic before us today, so I would like to keep everything organized. Please do not speak out of turn, and if you need to speak, turn on your name tags up, and I will acknowledge you, and then they will give you the floor. Also, before we start going to the business, I would like to say the following statement, land acknowledgement. I would like to acknowledge that we are on the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramitash Ohlone, who are the original inhabitants of the San Francisco Peninsula. As the indigenous stewards of this land and in accordance with their traditions, the Ramitash Ohlone have never ceded, lost, nor forgotten their responsibility as the caretakers of this place. as well as for all peoples who reside in their traditional territory. As guests, I recognize that we benefit from living and working on their traditional homeland. I wish to pay my respects by acknowledging the ancestors, elders, and relatives of the Hermitage community, past, present, and future, and by affirming their sovereign rights as First Peoples. Thank you, everyone, for indulging me in this. Moving on to public comment for items that are not on the agenda. Staff will note any written comments and allow members of the public to speak. Ms. Montes, if you would please share the list of the attendees while you advise the public how they may participate during public comment.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. And really quick, through the chair, if I can just ask members, because it's going to be a very important conversation, to really speak into the mic to make sure we capture everything on video if we need to go back to it at a later time for the letter. Thank you. And I will now share the list of attendees. For those attending on this meeting in person, please submit your speaker slips located by the entrance to me. If you're attending on the Zoom video conference, we will use the raise hand feature in order to organize any public comments. During the general public comment period, I will ask those members of the public who wish to comment to click the raise hand feature to speak on that agenda item. For those joining by phone, please press *9 to indicate your desire to speak. When you hear your name called, I will prompt you to unmute your microphone and inform you that you may begin speaking. You will have 2 minutes. And Chairman, I do see one virtual hand raised for items not on the agenda, so I will first call on Darlene Yapley. Ms. Yapley?
Thank you to SFO for adopting a NEAM for noise monitoring. Referencing the March airport noise report, the number of noise events changed significantly depending on the method, especially outside the DNL 65 contour. For example, Site 9 Millbrae, 14 threshold duration method versus 143 for a NEAM. Site 7 Brisbane, 38 versus 67. Site 11 Burlingame, 18 versus 156. Site 17 Foster City, 340 versus 412. Site 13 Hillsborough, 11 versus 45. A NEAM reports more events and is more accurate. Some examples were a 10x increase in the number of events with the NEAM, but DNL only increased 2 dBs. Why is this? DNL does not accurately capture the lived experience of noise impacts. And above is a better metric for communities overflown and outside of the 65 contour. It represents the annoying number of events and noise levels per event. We need the and above metric to be used for decision-making, not DNL. The next step, we need to know how loud the events are. Right now, the report only states the number of aircraft noise events per monitor location. It does not state how loud. What you want is to report the number of planes with a certain peak level of noise, which is called LMAX. And also, you want to know the ambient noise per location. Roundtable members, please ask SFO to report and above LMAX between 45 and 80 dB and 5 dB increments, including ambient noise. Reporting and above LMAX is a typical way of reporting noise events. Don't report and above SEL because people don't experience SEL, which is the sound pressure of a noise event, in 1 second. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Yapley. I will now call on Q. Smith.
Hello, thank you for the opportunity. Give me one moment. Okay, yes. Hi, I'm a resident of East Palo Alto and concerned citizens. My family also live in Menlo Park. And we are highly impacted by the overflow. We are highly impacted communities by the overflowness of what's going on. We are also concerned about the DNL 65, that it does not reflect the next gen concentration of flights and the level of annoyance for decision making. The noise policy should have a new decision making metrics in above with LMAX that reflects our lived experiences of these impacts. Currently, line 99 on the draft has comments of none, but, we need you guys to think about that. So thank you for the time, and I hope this was at the right moment. And it's very important that we continue to have hybrid for situations as such. I'm dealing with an elderly family member, but I did think that this meeting was very important. So thank you for having it on Zoom so that I could be a part. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, Chairman, we have no further hands raised for items not on the agenda.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Montes, and thank you for members of the public who shared their comments with us. We will now consider setting the agenda and taking action on the consent agenda items. Ms. Montes, do we have any public comments on items 1 and 2?
Thank you, Chairman. I did not receive any speaker slips in the room for item,
Okay.
and I do not have any virtual hands raised. For this item, we did receive a written public comment that was circulated by Mr. Peter Grace to the membership and posted to the website. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Grace. As noted, we are in receipt of your communication with us. With that, I will. Oh, okay, go ahead. So joined us from SFO, Ms. Nupur Sinha, welcome. Good to have you with us. All right, moving on. I would now close the public comments for items 1 and 2, and I will entertain a motion to set the agenda and approve the consent agenda.
I would, through the chair, I would make an motion to approve the agenda, but I would like to remove item 2 for a brief discussion.
Item 2, noted.
Second.
Okay, thank you. We do have a motion and a second, with item 2 being, absent item 2, correct? All right. Do we have anyone on Zoom that is voting, Ms. Montes? Do we have anyone on Zoom that is voting, or we have quorum enough in the room? We have enough
Yes.
quorum
We
in the
have
room. Okay,
quorum
perfect. Then
present, correct.
I'm not going to go ahead and call the roll, and those who are in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain?
I'll abstain. I was absent the last meeting.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Royce. Vice Chair Royce? Not that you are not Vice Mayor.
It's been a while ago.
Okay. Okay, with that, motion passes. Thank you, everyone. All right. Next item is item number 3 on our agenda, overview of FAA noise policy
We're
review.
going to,
Through the chair, Member O'Connell wanted to
Oh,
pull
I'm
item
sorry,
2 for
my
discussion.
apologies, number 2. Item 2 on the consent.
so I did want to pull this item just to see on Peter Grace, who is one of my constituents, I think wrote a very heartfelt letter about the ANEEM system. And I was wondering if the airport could comment on his discussion about how we could get the non-Title 21 noise monitors set to a 55 dB to more accurately reflect community noise levels and actually capture airplane noise that is happening in our communities more correctly. So I would appreciate any comments that the airport can make, and if they have nothing prepared, perhaps we could bring it back at a later date.
Thank you. I'll ask Bert. Bert, are you interested? Will you be able to comment tonight, or is it something you want to bring back?
I can comment briefly, but in detail, we'll have to come back. It's a rather lengthy letter, but in general, ANEEM captures what they're asking for in the fact that it floats the threshold. As far as the NPD numbers that we report, we went through with the consultants and selected the optimal thresholds per site. As far as the state of California is concerned, we can set anything outside of the noise contour to whatever we would like.
Thank Thank you. I appreciate the willingness for staff to bring that back to a further discussion.
Thank you. Ms. Schneider?
If we're going to look at that, and I'm trying to catch up with Palo Alto resident Darlene Yapley, the other missing information in how we record data is duration on that. So I'm wondering, Bert, in the light of a NEAM, could you also look at duration information and report back if it can do duration or not, or what we might be able to do with duration in the future? And for the public, if you are sitting in Millbrae and you are one of the households that are at the end of runway 1 left or runway right, and it's midnight and you can hear one plane after another, after another, after another, after another. So really, there is no quiet time in between those airplanes. So to me, another missing piece of data is duration. It's peak, that peak noise, but if it lasts 3 minutes up there, that's not, and then goes straight into another one that lasts 3 minutes, that's not the information we're getting. Thank you.
Noted. Thank you.
Duration does figure into it, obviously, especially if we're reporting it as SEL. If we're reporting it LMAX, then no, duration's a separate item. And we do capture durations.
It would be nice to see a chart, especially in those peak times, of what the real experience is. But we can always bring that to ground-based noise.
We can bring it to ground-based noise or technical working group. We're gonna really be getting deep into the weeds on that.
But it's reality.
It is reality, and to effectively do it, I would recommend that we do focused items rather than just blanket reporting, because that would just be a lot of work for little effort, little result.
Thank you, Mr. Ganong. Okay, so any more discussion on item number 2? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve item 2 on the consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Member Schneider. Second by anyone? Thank you, Member Pine. Got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Abstain? Motion carries. Thank you very much. And now back to agenda item number 3, overview of FAA noise policy review. Before we begin the details of editing, or actually getting your input and the discussion on the Roundtable draft letter, I'd like to ask Roundtable consultant Gene Reindale to give us a very brief overview of the process to respond to the FAA's request for comments on their noise policy. Gene?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Angela, could we bring the presentation up? So I just have 4 quick slides here. You could have read them in the packet, which is why we got them to you earlier. I'm just going to cover some of the high points here. First and foremost, I want to say that this is an opportunity of a lifetime, quite frankly. The aviation noise policy is from the 1970s, hasn't been updated since. The 1970s, well, actually it was the 1960s, was the dawn of the jet age, which promulgated the civil aviation noise policy to be developed in the 70s. So we've come a long way since then. We're not dealing with the same issues that we were at the dawn of the jet age, certainly, and I would recommend not only as a body that you comment to the FAA, but also as a member of the public. We may not, in this roundtable, everybody put in all the comments that you may have wanted to get in, because this is all, everybody needs to agree to these, but if there are things that didn't get in or don't get in, you have that opportunity as a member of the public to actually provide your comments as well. So hopefully I've made this as important as it should be. I think it is a quite important moment. And it did come from the noise environmental survey that the FAA did a few years ago that showed that people are more annoyed today at the same sound levels as in the 1970s. So while noise of aircraft have gone down, annoyance has gone up, and it's not a surprise to anybody in this room that that's the case. We've seen it all across the country. We've got more flights now at lower noise levels. We also have concentrated flight paths at lower noise levels, but you have a lot of them if you're under those flight paths, as you know. So very important to provide this feedback. If you go to the next slide, please. A little bit of supplementary information. There's like 4 points here. First, the FAA is reviewing research on the effects of exposure to aviation noise. Second, the FAA is reviewing its standard noise metric, which is the day-night average sound level, or DNL. And that is also akin to the community noise equivalent level, which is used in the state of California. And because Title 21, in which that metric came about, was published before Part 150 from the FAA did allow California to continue to use CNEL in lieu of DNL. And then third, the FAA is reviewing its definition of the threshold of significance under NEPA, or National Environmental Protection Act reviews. And that is currently set at 1.5 decibels within the 65 day-night average sound level contour. And that is known as if an action would cause a 1.5 decibel increase in noise within the 65 DNL contour, they would see that as a significant impact. And last, the FAA is examining the level of aircraft noise exposure below which land uses are considered normally compatible. And that's where Part 150 came from, which was a result of the Aviation Safety and Noise Act of 1979 that required the FAA to determine land uses that are normally compatible with various levels of aircraft noise. So those are the things that really are being looked at in this update or review of the civil aviation noise policy in the U.S. In their request, the FAA was pretty specific. They have several questions that they would like public comment on, and within 11 categories that are shown on this slide. And we're going to go through each of these 11 categories as we continue with the letter that was drafted by the Roundtable coordinator with help from the chair, I believe, and myself. And so we'll go through those. I don't need to go through all these right now. But again, I think the number one is vehicle type. Remember, when the civil aviation noise policy was adopted, it was all about the jets that were occurring, and now we have various different types of vehicles and some new entrants, such as the eVTOLs, or electric vertical and takeoff and landing type vehicles that are about to, they're in the process of being certificated. So we want to think about not only what vehicles are now, but in the future or near future as well. The comment period does run until July 31st. The FAA is not opposed to lengthening that period, but the last time they put out a similar request, they had a 60-day comment period. Industry asked for more time, so they gave them 90 days. And so this time they started with 90 days, so they're less likely to extend it, but they are not closed to extending it. So if people or industry ask for it to be extended, it might be, but we should not count on that. I think this may be the only meeting that we have before that July 31st deadline occurs, which is why we want to go through the letter today. There have been 4 webinars that the FAA has put on. If you were unable to join any of those, they are available online. You can still click on that website there and view the YouTube videos of those. And so those are still available. You can't ask questions at this point. Questions are, it's likely that the questions that you might have were asked in one or more of those other meetings. And the FAA is trying to make it really easy how to submit questions through the e-rulemaking or the e-regulations, electronically. You can even do a fax or a letter, or you can hand deliver it in Washington, D.C. So they really do want comments on this. And with that, I think I'll take any specific questions if you have them, but that was just my way of trying to make sure you understand the importance of what we're about to go through here today.
Any questions thus far for Gene? Obviously, we're going to continue to be discussing, Member Schneider?
Thank you. Jean, if I remember correctly, the FAA's Neighborhood Environmental Survey did not include SFO, nor did it include any example neighborhoods that sit behind runways that experience the blast from jets on departure. So my concern when I reviewed this was the Neighborhood Environmental Survey completely disregards the experience that the close-in communities of SFO experience. And that right then and there, I'd like it in the record of the minutes, and the FAA needs to take note of that, and we need to take note of that in our letter. So if they're basing a lot of their work on that, and it ignored our situation, it's missing a lot of data. Am I correct?
Yeah, I'm not able to disagree with that. They were looking at more traditional, where you have operations in both directions. So while you get the, what we call in this backblast noise, but you also probably get overflights. And with the overflights, or departures or arrivals or something like that, you would also then be in a higher DNL as a result. So yes.
To put this in really simple terms, especially because we have so many new members, if you haven't yet, you need to go to Tan Fran and San Bruno, and you perfectly experience a gap
Member
departure.
Schneider, I hate to.
I'm sorry.
No,
Let me
hate-
finish.
let-
I've got
hold
one
on.
more minute.
Okay,
on,
go ahead.
let me have this. And that experience is what the FAA included in their neighborhood experience, but they didn't include what we experienced in Millbrae. So the gap departures over San Bruno, South San Francisco, and Daly City are considered, but my community, portions of Burlingame and Hillsborough, are not.
Member Schneider, I just want to ask you this time to remain on the topic. These grievances that you are talking about are valid, but they're not what we are discussing today.
I disagree.
Okay, thank you for disagreeing. But given the time and the importance of what we're discussing, I would like to stay on point. And please do not get off point, because otherwise I will stop you. Thank you. Okay, moving on. Thank you, Jean. I couldn't really agree with you more regarding the importance of this and how critical it is and how important this opportunity for us to give that input and feedback to the FAA. So with that, again, I would like us to, this meeting, as you know, is the only meeting before July 31st, where we have to submit to the FAA comment period deadline. So if we want to send in comments from the roundtable, we need to authorize a letter at this meeting, if that is the will of the members, of course. The draft letter has two parts, the cover letter and the comments attachments. We will start with the comments, which has 11 categories, as Jean has outlined, as determined by the FAA in their request. So there are many things that we would like to have to include with the FAA, but what the request is clear, we have to remain within those 11 categories. As we consider each category, I will ask the roundtable technical consultant, Eugene Reindel, to provide a very brief introduction to the category, and then take comments from members. Jean and the roundtable coordinator, Ms. Wentworth, are available to answer any questions. We are seeking thoughts, whether you disagree or would like to remove anything from the draft, items you'd like to add to the draft, important modification you'd like to make to an item in the draft. This is not the time for detailed wordsmithing, like I said, but we're talking about what's the content. If we are to get through this document tonight, we need concepts, please. At the end of the discussion on each of the 11 categories, we will reach consensus on changes for that item. And also at the end of discussing all 11 categories, we will briefly review the cover letter for any significant changes need to be made. Then we will take public comments relating to any of the 11 categories or the cover letters. Following public comments and any future member discussions, I will, if any member wish, I would entertain a motion to adopt the proposed roundtable draft comments as modified and direct roundtable staff using meeting notes and the video of this meeting to incorporate the changes as indicated by the members into a final letter to be reviewed by roundtable executive committee, which is composed of myself and Vice Chair Royce, signed and then submitted to the FAA. The reason for this, again, we go back to the deadline that we have to submit these suggestions to the FAA. So we are limited on the timeline, and this is where we are. So I will take the first category, which is the vehicle type. And Mr. Randell, please tell us about this category.
Yeah, pretty much already stated it. Remember, the civil aviation noise policy was adopted during the dawn of the jet age, where it was extremely loud jets compared to what we have now. But they want to know what vehicles should be included in their civil aviation noise policy. I still think jets are the main topic here. They're the main focus probably, but what other are helicopters, are the new eVTOLs, other electric aircraft that might be coming. So just kind of think about vehicles as maybe more than jets, but I know that jets certainly have to be addressed in this.
Thank you. So looking at the packet, you could see, starting with line 12, under vehicle types, these are the comments that, there are comments in there that we are proposing that you approve, so we could submit to the FAA. I'm gonna open the floor for any discussions or questions. Member Schneider.
I can't tell if this is going to be on point or not. At the UC Davis Aviation seminar, they had the new air taxis coming up, and the new air taxis are doing routes starting very soon from San Francisco to San Jose, which will be flying right over all of us, but also flying over airspace that has the Coast Guard, that has other news agency helicopters, has medical helicopters, has PG&E flights going over to check lines on this. At what point in this letter are we going to look at all of the various types of aviation, including drones, that would all be flying over the exact same airspace? It's one thing if you're in an airspace and one type of aircraft goes over it, but if every type of aircraft goes over it, you have a cumulative impact on that. And that is my biggest fear. One of my biggest fears coming out of the UC Davis was just how prevalent these taxis could be on that. But then add everything else on top of it.
Okay, thank you, Member Schneider. Ms. Wentworth, would you like to comment on that?
Just so we can focus on what we're, on the document in front of us. If we look at line, starting line 48, which is on page 2, we've talked several things about what the FAA terms emerging aircraft. And this talks about air taxis and talks about package delivery. So the first one is done by VTOL aircraft. Those are vertical takeoff and landing aircraft that may or may not be working at San Francisco Airport, I'm not sure. And package drones. And what we're recommending in that case has to do with the fact that whatever the FAA chooses to do on that, it should be strictly regulated in conjunction with the local elected officials and the public in the areas over which they traverse. Going on to say, please do not cede the low altitude airspace to an industry-heavy FAA committee to set regulations and give away the low altitude airspace to the detriment of residents' health and quality of life. And then we go on to say that in order to protect the residents, we would ask them to involve local city councils and other ways to communicate. And importantly, we would ask that regulations about package delivery should provide nighttime operational limits, so that this would be no package, this way this is written is to be no package delivery and no overflight between 6 p.m. and 8 a.m. And that's what we're recommending to the FAA as part of this package for discussion.
Member Schneider.
I appreciate that, and I did read that, and I think that's good, but that doesn't speak to the accumulation of aircraft from multiple sources on there. So can we add something in there that talks about, at least at minimum, it needs to be studied? And I will tell you, there's probably very few communities that have as many different types of aircraft at all different times of day flying over itself, plus all of the operations from, the regular operations from SFO. At some point, we have to stand up for ourselves collectively.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any comments, or do you want me to handle?
You want me to? The only thing I would say here is I think I would contend that if you have some added language to propose, that would be great. But I think what Kathleen just stated was the fact that they work with the local entities to be sure that those things are taken into account. And we might not have said the cumulative effect of all those types of vehicles, but it's certainly in there that this is an issue that should be worked with not only on a federal level, but a local level, so that the local entities can have a bite at the apple, if you will, of what they're going to allow in their communities.
I appreciate that. I'll have the city send a formal letter in your timeline.
So just,
Mr. Chairman, could I add a comment there?
sure.
I think Member Schneider raised a great issue, and there are a lot of issues dealing with these new types of aircraft. Not the least of which is where they're located and who has land use controls and all the rest of it. I think the premise we're operating under is that if we can get local involvement in that with all of those decisions, that would be the first step, rather than trying to determine policy in a broader segment. So the point of this is to try to make sure that we emphasize that whatever decisions are made and whoever is granted the authority, that the local bodies have inputted and have a seat at the table on that, not just industry. But having said that, I think your comment is spot on with respect to cumulative impact, as well as time of day. I mean, those are big issues, and that's what we're trying to get to. So I'd support adding something on cumulative impact, but again, under the context of local control.
I appreciate the comment, Vice Chair, and that is really what we're doing today is really limited, and we are limiting ourselves to what the FAA has requested. But I think our response, you're right, by emphasizing that local, basically, I'm gonna call it local control or decision for the local municipalities to regulate and they will give us all that thing that Mr. Schneider is asking for. So at this point, I think we captured what is needed and our response. As these things start developing and coming forward, as we're requesting that cities and city councils have the authority, not the, that to be able to regulate when and where and how. So that will be in our jurisdiction. That's what we are advocating for. I hope that answered the question. All right. Member Schneider, you still have any more comments on this? Thank you. Okay.
Oh.
Yes.
So on
Member O'Connor.
on the supersonic flights, do you think we're being strong enough in our wording here that we're sending to them about supersonic flights? Because isn't the quiet boom sort of a different noise they use to counteract the noise that's heard on the ground? So it's creating more noise pollution in its own right. It's just trying to counteract the sound effects. Is that how that works?
So with supersonics, what's being looked at now is that these manufacturers see a market in traveling essentially like coast to coast, not just over oceans at this point. It's really, unless they're able to get approval to fly from New York to LA, that type of operation in the US, I'm not sure how viable the supersonics are. So they've been lobbying Congress and the FAA to allow for supersonic travel, because right now we do not in our noise policy. And so that's why we wanted to put language in there about supersonics and how important that is, because you're right, wherever the airplane flies, that sonic boom will be heard.
So do you think that the language is strong enough? We're adamant about it, and
Right.
you know,
Well, this is your document, so that's not for me to say.
Kathleen, do they understand stronger language than what you've written, or do you think this is strong enough to
I
say
think,
we're adamantly against it?
I think it's strong enough. I think it says, we first quoted from a letter that the Roundtable sent out several years ago, saying, don't fly here. And then what Jean just mentioned was they have a special kind of technique, device, I'm not exactly sure how it works, that they apparently will utilize during takeoff in order to meet the takeoff category requirements. The concern that we're bringing up for that is that whatever that magic device is that's going to help keep it quiet enough to qualify as a stage
5.
4, 5?
5. We're in stage 5 right
Stage
now.
5. That they don't turn it off too soon. And so I think the concern that I could see is those measurements are taken of aircraft at 1,500 feet, or is
Around there. certification, right.
When they're doing the testing of whether they qualify or not. And so the concern that I can see is that they would pass the qualifications, they turn these things off at 1,500 feet, and then all of a sudden it starts getting even more noisy again. So that's what we're addressing here in part, is that whatever this technique is or this device is that they're using has to be used till they get up to up to altitude, cruise altitude.
So the 10,000 feet is what you're saying is cruise?
No, we're talking 30,000 feet or whatever.
Oh, I thought it said 10,000 in this letter.
Oh, that's a reference to something else. That's a reference to other regulations.
Okay.
That have to do with airspeed.
Okay.
Not necessarily at all related to the sonic boom sound. So, yes, I think it's clear that we don't want to see, if we go on to the next page, where it talks about, say, around line 34, we oppose supersonic flight over the land of the United States in a territorial sea, regardless of any purported quiet sonic boom technology.
And do they think 12 nautical miles is something that our coastal residents would not hear if they're 12 miles out?
It's what, as I understand it, it's the part of the ocean that the United States or any country
Has control.
has control over. So I don't think we control beyond that point, is what I'm saying. So basically, anything that the United States can control, land and the bordering ocean of 12 miles, we oppose it. We oppose supersonic flight over the land and the 12 miles.
Okay.
And that's a period at the end of that, regardless of how quiet they say the technology is. Is that
Thank you.
the question?
Member Schneider.
So just in reference of a stage 5 jet engine, my understanding is between 3, 4, and 5, maybe some reduction in low frequency noise and vibration was done, but not much. So if we're talking about supersonics at a stage 5 jet engine, what is that going to mean on a gap departure or a close or runway 1 departures on that? Can we add language that says we encourage the FAA to look at a stage 6 engine that reduces low frequency noise and vibration? How often does this opportunity come for the FAA?
First of all, stage 6, I would say, is not part of, any stage is not part of the noise policy, actually. And there's a nuance there, is that that's dictated through ICAO and the US Congress to decide what it is they're going to certify aircraft at various stages of noise. I think what you do have is, we don't know what the backblast noise is going to be from these aircraft engines, these supersonic engines, because they don't exist yet. So, they're working on the propulsion of these aircraft, but they don't exist at this time.
Thank you, Gene. And Kathleen. Okay. Anyone would like to add any concepts, not a verbiage per se, but a concept to category 1 on the draft response? I don't see any. Okay, anyone would like to have any deletion or disagrees with any of the concepts that are in the draft for vehicle type, which is item number 1? I do not see any. Okay, with that, seems like we have consensus that there are no changes on category 1. Huh?
Yeah, I think we
Okay. Moving on to category number 2, operations of air vehicles, which starts on line 64, if you're following up on your packet. And I'm going to turn it over to Gene again to kind of give us briefly about this category.
Yeah, so just essentially operations just means the arrival, departures, overflights, training circuits for airports that have a lot of flight training activity. They kind of go around in circles, so to speak. So those are the typical types of operations that are thought about. So the FAA is asking, are those the right operations? Are there other operations that we should be considering? So that's the ask for the types of operations.
Thank you, Gene, for that clarification, and kind of help set up the discussion here on the roundtable. I just want to note before we get started on the member present here that I did receive an email from Member Taylor who is not able to attend the meeting today, and she has comments about line 99, which we basically, our response on it has been no comment, and I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Wentworth to kind of expand a little bit on that email and with a response to Ms. Taylor.
So, Member Taylor suggested some verbiage to replace line 99, which was to be our comment, and we had no comment to make for that particular category. And so Ms. Taylor suggested this comment, which would fit perfectly in that place. And I'm just changing her first person to third person, but the rest of the words are hers. Some of our communities continue to be excluded from mitigation measures, noise insulation, and are concerned that DNL 65 does not reflect the next-gen concentration of flights and level of annoyance for decision-making. They should use LMAX that reflects our lived experience of impacts. So I would take that to be a request to add that comment to in place line 99.
What was the last sentence? I'm sorry.
They should use, FAA, should use LMAX that reflects our lived experience of impacts.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm gonna open this up for discussion if anyone has any concerns or disagrees with that to be included or have any comments on it. I think that's a valid comment, Kathleen, to be added, and I think you had mentioned that. So without any opposition, then no, we'll add that to 99 rather than being none. Thank you.
So is the question directly for overflight communities, as in ones that aren't being takeoff and landings, it's just overflight?
Yes, that's the section. It's actually section 2C, if I remember right, in the FAA's request. So it's category 2, and it's any issues, particularly with overflights, which is one of the types of operations that occur.
It's just kind of hard sometimes to draw a hard line between what's an overflight and what's a takeoff and a landing. There's kind of a chunk of space
I mean,
in the middle.
for us, normally wouldn't an overflight be things that aren't in that airspace, so it's,
Way
you
up.
know, at 10 or 20, whatever thousand feet?
Yeah.
That could be overflights. Unless it's on, technically speaking, a departure is from the time it leaves the airport till it's supposedly up to cruise, but I wouldn't take it that far. It's really up until, you know, maybe they level off before they get all the way up to cruise, but then it starts to be, you know, in the area of an overflight. Whereas an arrival, once they're on that, you know, descent into the airport, that's an arrival. And I would extend, you know, even maybe, then the other things on the peninsula, for example, are things that maybe come over from Oakland. Maybe they're on that, you know, more level off phase, or maybe they are 20 or 30 or 40,000 feet up. So all that is overflight.
Yeah, I understand that, and I have no objection to the language being added.
Thank you, appreciate your comment. Member Schneider.
Point of clarification, on the categories that we've got here for number 2, operations, it says takeoff, landing, departure, arrival, and circuits. I'm not exactly sure what a circuit means, but departure, landing. So with Member Taylor's comments, I think it applies to all of those, doesn't it? And I would support it applying to all of those. Everything that the FAA is allowing us to include under number 2. And that should handle everybody from South County, it should handle Brisbane, it should be everyone. Okay.
Absolutely, no
Great.
problem. Yeah, thank you.
Do you need a motion on that, or it's?
No, we're not,
Okay.
we just, basically, at the end, we will take a motion with, including all the comments that we approve, that we agree on. Thank you, Member Schneider. Okay, anyone has any questions or comments on operation of air vehicles? Any changes? Any deletions, additions? Okay, seeing none, other than Member Taylor, who will take Member Taylor's suggestion then and add it to the language. And with that, I will move on to category number 3, the DNL. And that also, yes,
On the item on line 104,
yes.
the question that they raise about drone package deliveries, shouldn't we repeat the information that was earlier about package deliveries in that subsection?
Absolutely. We could do that. Does anyone disagree with that comment to be added? Basically, what we had on category 1 language, we're going to add it, repeat it here for drone package delivery. Thank you, Member O'Connor, for bringing that. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, moving on then to category number 3, the DNL, which starts on line 109 on your packet. And again, Jean, please give us a little bit of, talk a little bit about this category.
Sure, I've already talked about this somewhat, but the FAA uses the day-night average sound level, DNL, as their measure of significance, as their measure of land use compatibility. Want to know any issues that we might have with that metric, whether we believe it's the right metric, those sorts of things. So it's really about the FAA's use of the day-night average sound level, which is CNEL also in California. Those are the same, because the FAA does allow for CNEL to be used in California in place of DNL.
Thank you, Gene. So this is obviously one of those categories that is very important to us, the noise metrics. We had many discussions about this. We had many comments from the public as well as members, past and present, about noise metrics. And I'm going to open the floor for any discussions on this or comments, questions for Gene or Kathleen.
Through the chair.
Yes.
Is this something where we would want to mention LMAX or the ANEEM methods to get a better data rather than just single events that register? Wouldn't this be a good place to add those comments to maybe get a change so we're not just looking at, so we get the full experience on the ground of our citizens?
Want me to?
Gene, yes, please.
My thought on that is that there are sections down below where they're asking for what are some other supplemental or alternative metrics, and I think this is just on the discussion of DNL itself and its validity.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, I did get a letter from a resident asking that we include the language in the letter that we had written in 2021, April 2021, on the noise environmental study. It was pretty specific and addressed some of the issues just raised. I think our recommendation, at least my recommendation would be, is that we include it in our record for tonight, and we attach that letter, which has already been approved by this committee and previously forwarded, is the attachment to this letter, because there are some additional points, although most of the points covered in that letter we're covering tonight. But for example, we talk about environmental justice programs, we talk about the Schultz curve and some of those things. And Ricardo, you were chairman at the time, you may remember that letter, but it was a very well-received letter. And I would suggest that we include that letter as an attachment.
That sounds good to me, but can you speak a little bit more about the letter? Just the bullet points, what does it include for those of us who were not present?
We should, I just got the request here just before this meeting started, so unfortunately I didn't have a chance to copy it. We will forward it to everybody, but in the letter, the FAA asked for comments back on the FAA aircraft noise policy and research efforts. And they wanted to know specifically about the noise measurement methodology, the reporting and sharing of information with communities, and that was done with the understanding of the intensification of the flight, particularly over residential communities and the cumulative noise impacts. We responded with a series of specific comments. I think we broke it into, if I'm looking at the letter now, into 4 different categories. One was effects of noise on individuals and communities, and we had 8 specific comments under that. For example, prioritizing flights over water rather than land, new policy to employ the NAS rather than the Schultz-Pycon curve, reinstituting, and this has already been done, the FAA Office of Environmental and Energy to address community noise impacts, a number of items like that. I won't read them all. Second category is noise modeling, noise metrics, and environmental data. and that was recommending replacing the use of the CNL and the DNL with other metrics, supplemental metrics. There was a comment on low and high frequencies, and you would appreciate that. You remember we commented that we needed more data on ground-based noise frequencies. I don't know if I'm going to read them all, Mr. Chairman. It's fairly detailed, and in addition, there were probably, 8, 12, 3, 7, so whatever that adds up to, specific recommendations. Many of which, as we've gone through this just before this meeting started, I think were included in this letter, but there's some were not. But whether they were included or not, they had previously been approved by this committee, communicated, and they do speak to some extent to what we're addressing now.
Thank
And
you.
I hate to lose the impact of those comments.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate you bringing this up, and thanks to the member of the public who reached out to you and communicated that.
Yeah.
I think this is an opportune time to bring this memo to life by attaching it and including it on our response to the FAA.
Well, through the
Member
chair,
O'Connor.
while it may be effective to attach the letter, it could be more effective to pull out excerpts and put them into the correct position in this letter so that they're addressed also in the body. So it's not that the FAA is looking at an appendix or an attachment, and we could do an excerpt, review through this letter, and pull out some of those things that are specific to the specific topics. I don't have it in front of me, but perhaps that's something
Yeah.
Kathleen could do
Kathleen?
and pull out some of the things that are appropriate.
I would think that it might be given more time and given an opportunity for this body to then oversee what choices were made or not made. I'm a little bit concerned that I don't see a path forward for how to do that under our structure. But if I could just say one other thing, the way that this uploading to the FAA portal works, I haven't uploaded anything, I've just looked at it and gotten ready to do so. It's kind of in several sections, and the first section is kind of an opportunity to give like your overview of what you're going to say, and then you click on your attachments, one of which would be our big report, one of which could be this letter, one of which could be the FAA initiative that we passed in 2016, which was a massive, you were definitely here then, a massive undertaking by this body to respond to the FAA with a lot of noise issues. And so that document is actually referenced by link in this one, but we could actually make a separate attachment. The benefit of doing that is that these comments are totally open to the public. And I would hope that perhaps there would be an opportunity for other noise advocacy groups or other roundtables to benefit from reading each other's recommendations. And so I would advocate for putting a few attachments on there in toto as we pass them. Some of them from the 2021 might not be totally au courant, and I think I'd rather see it sort of as a standalone as it was, but good.
And I guess that would be one reason to do it earlier than later so that our document gives the benefit to other communities to be able to reference the work that we've done and piggyback.
Yes, absolutely.
Mr. Chair, if I can make one other comment. I did not disclose the name of the resident who sent me the letter only because it was sent to me, not to the committee, and I want to respect their privacy, but I would urge the person during public comments, if she would like to comment on it, to please do so.
Thank you, Vice Chair, for clarifying that. Thank you, Member O'Connor and Member Schneider.
I think I'm in the same boat. I received a comment, so I just saw it around 6 o'clock today, so I'm still trying to absorb it. I think the gist is looking at any of the overflight communities, which could be Palo Alto, East Palo Alto, Foster City, Millbrae, that DNL isn't working. So, and I read through everything that staff have written, and I think we capture a lot of it. We talk about 55 DNEL, but I thought the annoyance study said that people actually experience annoyance at 50 decibels. So we may want to look at the 50 decibel in addition to the 55. The person who wrote to me said we should probably be looking at N-weighted, and I'm flipping between documents here. Hold on one second, I will get that. I think the main point, which is nothing new for any of you hearing me, maybe the way to address this in this DNEL section is to ask the FAA to conduct studies that can confirm or disregard what we found in our spectral analysis modeling study, that any airport that has mountains running in back of it are experiencing a different set of noise than the airport takes in, and that's not captured in DNEL on that. And we've got the study. I will tell you that that study was basically refuted in the airport's sea level rise work. So it would be nice to have some additional studies that would look at how low frequency noise moves up hillsides on there. And I'm not sure that got captured in this DNEL study in here. But some additional studies could be very, very valid. I know we're going to be doing our new hard data measurement, so we'll have a little bit more. But maybe we can put that in that letter. And I'm just flipping back. The request was, we're going to, I think, going to get into C-weighted later in the topics, but to look for an N above metric.
Okay.
So could we add an N above metric in that as a consideration under DNEL?
So the question, I think, before us is really, what is it that the FAA is asking and willing to look at into? Not that what you had mentioned is not valid. Is this the right place to do it and the right time to do it? And
Yeah, I'm not
I'll
sure if
defer
it
to
belongs
Jean.
in some of the other numbers in there, but
Sure. I would defer to Jean if what I said is accurate. If it's not, and we're able to include that, I'm more than happy to.
No, again, I think this is about DNL, whereas there are other sections that we're going to get to that talk about what is there in addition or instead of DNL.
okay.
But thank you for that comment. Member Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just want to clarify, what is the timing constraints that we're facing right now? If we don't approve this tonight, and if we take it back and re-wordsmith it and bring it back for the next meeting, we will not meet the deadline. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So with that, I'm going to go to what Member Royce was talking about. I remember that letter. I remember being very proud of what that letter said. And yes, there might be a few things missing from that on here, but I would suggest that the majority of what's in that letter is included in this document. And I would also suggest that we should move forward. And I don't know that we're going to add much by including the actual letter, so I would just say that we would move forward with this document. Well, I mean, we're going through it, but for this section, I would say that we should just move in with what's there right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Ortiz. Member Boyle.
On a separate subject, I have a comment on line 150. I think there's an inaccuracy there. It says knowing that open windows reduce the noise by 10 to 15 decibels. I think that's supposed to be closed.
No, it's not. No, the open window environment, your house with open windows, the noise reduction is about 10 to 15 decibels with windows open. And then it's about 20 to 25 with windows closed. And then about 30 if it's sound insulated.
I'm sorry. So you're saying that open windows reduce the outdoor noise by 10 to 15% still because you've got walls and other parts of your house? Is that what
Yeah,
it's saying?
because it's small openings compared
Okay.
to the whole house, so yeah, you still get 10 to 15 decibel reduction with windows open.
And pardon me through the chair, if I may, just for the record to reflect that a couple minutes ago, we did get Member Antonio Lopez from the city of East Palo Alto that joined us, and Member Rob Newsom from the city of San Mateo also joined us. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. And then I got Member Pang Maganayas, and then followed by Member Goodwin.
I'm just thinking that with this section, it asks what views or comments do you have about the FAA's core decision-making metric, DNL? I wonder if we started off the comment by stating that the Roundtable does not believe that the DNL is sufficient, because there's a lot of data that comes thereafter, and you kind of have to weed through to figure out what the actual position is. But if we clearly stated it up front, that'll trigger the FAA to know that actually this is inadequate.
I like that comment.
So
Thank you.
What line would that be at?
It's line 112.
So it would be replacing
Just
line.
a clarifying statement up front that says
adding it.
Roundtable or whatever does not believe that DNL is an adequate measurement. Or something like that.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone has any comments on what just said? Okay, seeing none. Member Goodwin.
Thank you, Chair. So I think that lines 150 and 154 are unnecessarily confusing, and starting at knowing that. You might want to consider changing it. I don't want to wordsmith it, but I think this will help. If you say an open window reduces noise by 10 to 15 dB, resulting in a interior SEL of 65 to 70 dB, period. A closed window has an interior SEL of 75 to 80 dB for standard home construction, and 85 to 90 dB with, insulation applied. And then these factors, or those factors may be ... and continue with that. Because again, it's unnecessarily confusing, and for a layperson to look at that statement, I think you're going to be confused. I mean, I had to read and reread that paragraph multiple times to figure out what was going on. I had that same feeling of like, an open window, or an open window can actually reduce sound. I was like, there's no way, but it actually does. So to rephrase that, in whichever way I think the committee decides to make it a little bit less confusing. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Member Goodwin. You want to comment on that, Kathleen? Okay. So noted, anyone has any objection or have any comments on this suggestion? Okay, so we're gonna incorporate that, and we're gonna also incorporate some language on 112, the roundtable. Okay, anything else on this? Member Pine?
I think, we've made it clear that we think that DNL is inadequate as a measurement tool. But if the FAA continues to use it, we need to be more clear about what we think the level should be.
The level discussion is, again, in a subject below. So one of the other categories actually talks about, is a 65 the right level? So we'll get to that.
Set up later, okay.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Member Lopez? Sorry, I couldn't see your name
It's all
tag.
right. In my access for the day. Could be belying my ignorance here, but I just have a general trepidation. In cities we do specific plan updates for mobility, for traffic, and citing a almost 50-year report by the EPA just seems a bit kind of knee-jerk reaction. Maybe just a line to get the FAA to encourage the EPA to do an update study. I know we're talking about studies a lot, but just something specific about citing a report from '74, given the probably advances in technology, changes in understanding of anatomy, things of that nature, might be something worthwhile to pursue or consider.
Gene, Kathleen, any?
I mean, you can certainly add it in. And this would probably be the right place to do it. Because DNL really did come from that EPA study. So.
I mean, I'm just not sure. At some point, maybe we have a census every 10 years. We do updates for changes in understanding all the time, and it would seem that our concept of noise, particularly as we have new technologies, drones of that nature, it might alter after half a century. So just something to think about.
Was I mistaken that kind of the point of this paragraph was to say, hey, listen, way back in 1974 when they studied this, they said 55 was a good level.
Right. But now he's even questioning that, given things that have changed since 1974.
Right, but I mean, it's sort of like saying, wow, way back then they said 55 was what it should have been, but they didn't do it. They went to some, I don't know, took into account perhaps industry or some other entity. It's a nice little paragraph. We just remove it if that's easier too.
So, Kathleen, you're referring to line 126?
Yes, 26 through 29.
126 to 129, if we could read that and kind of see if that captures.
Well, I think what he's saying is that we're citing a 1974 study. Should we, at the end of that citing, suggest it needs to be redone?
Asking for another.
I mean, we could, I'm not sure that's what the FAA asked for, but that's fine.
The only problem with another study is the time delays when you start adding studies to this. I think the point, as Kathleen just pointed out, is that we believe at a minimum, as evidenced by a report even, 40, 50 years ago, it should have been 55 or lower. So I think maybe we can just clarify that sentence and say even 1954 was acknowledged by the EPA that the amount should have been 55 or lower. Then add on, if time permits, additional studies ought to be done, but we don't want to hold this up because, you know, trying to get studies done sometimes will add another year or two. So maybe just change the language with that.
I guess my question was, just upon reading it, it comes off as if that's the last study that was conducted, right? But I guess what you're saying is that's the precedent from 50 years ago. So I guess it would be helpful to just say, since then, there have been studies from the EPA. Like, I don't know if the EPA has done a study since then, have they? Yeah, I presume they have, but.
I don't personally know if there was any other studies.
No. But the NES study was kind of another stab at the EPA study, right? I mean, the EPA study ended up using what's known as the Schultz curve, or that was part of that. It actually followed the EPA, but, you know, they've updated that. So the NES study is kind of an update, but it doesn't go to the lengths of what the EPA did, and that was recommend compatible land uses given certain DNL values.
If I may, I wonder if this paragraph in toto maybe is just a little distracting from the rest of the verbiage in this section, and maybe we just delete that paragraph. It's just a standalone comment almost.
Well, my only comment is the EPA may not have done additional studies, but there have been studies done by scientific organizations, medical organizations, which support lower levels for noise annoyance. And I don't like the word annoyance because that de-emphasizes what it really is, which is a significant health concern. But I don't want to lose sight of the fact that there are studies out there, whether it's EPA or other studies, that support a lower threshold than 55, than what's currently being used. So how we communicate that, I don't know, but I think the point's well taken. Studies do not support 65 anymore.
Yeah.
That's the point.
When I read this, I think what I took from it is the intent here is to emphasize how inadequate the DNL is, rather than a number. And to the Vice Chair's point, there are definitely so many other studies, not necessarily from the EPA, but any groups, any roundtables, any people watching the noise and being impacted by the noise do agree. And I think the FAA does have that known. The question is, are they willing to change? And that is really where our comments and everybody else's from the public to be factored in. I think this is, I would keep it, Kathleen, because it's really making the point. Back then, the study 55, and you are at 65, so you're way behind the curve.
So
And
maybe, as a suggestion, we could say that, you know, even way back in 1974, the EPA recognized the inadequacy of, recognized the importance of setting a DNL level of 55. Would that be something in that line?
Okay. Please.
My comment is just, I agree with the chair. I think the paragraph should stay, perhaps enhance it as you just suggested. But I think it's a good paragraph.
Thank you. Okay, so great discussion on this, many suggestions, and I think we have, what, 3 or 4 at this point, Kathleen, that we're going to add?
Yes.
Okay. Would anybody else would have any comments on this DNL? Anybody would like to remove anything, delete anything? Okay, seeing none, then you have enough modification in there, Kathleen, that we will include in our motion as we get towards the end. Would you mind kind of?
So whatever scribbled down here is, and I'll make it sound better, I promise.
Okay.
Way back in 1974, the EPA recognized the importance of setting a low level of noise, something at 55 DNL,
So
which was not followed by, I mean, we can go into that if which was not which is not followed by the FAA, or not followed by the DOT, do we know?
Well, they didn't have to follow it, right?
Right.
It was a suggestion or a recommendation of the EPA. You know, the FAA did use DNL, which was recommended by the EPA, but did not go down to the 55 decibel level.
Okay. All right, seeing no further comments on this, we could.
I'm sorry, Chair.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm trying to figure out where this might fit. In section 173 to 183, it's talking about dilution of normal flow pattern, but there's an adverse to that.
I'm
Oh,
sorry.
wait, that's the next section.
Let me just to follow you. What, you're talking about line 173, you said?
Numbers 173 to 183, it's talking about basically section, I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong section.
You're
My
okay.
bad.
You're fine. We're coming right up, so you'll have your opportunity to do so.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so moving on to the averaging, which is category number 4, and again, starts with line 158. I'm going to turn it over to Gene one more time on a little brief.
Sure, so averaging is, so first of all, you use a day-night average sound level, so that's an average of a 24-hour time period. But the FAA goes further in their noise policy to actually use an annual average day. So what that means is that you take all the operations that occur throughout a year and divide those by 365 essentially and come up with your annual average day. Now that annual average day never truly exists at most airports because you don't use all of your flows, all of your runways on any single day, but they're all used eventually, right? So that's the annual average day, if you have any questions on what that is. But that's what the FAA is asking is about averaging, is the use of the annual average day. Okay, what are your thoughts about it and that sort of thing, so.
Okay, thank you, Gene. So, Member Schneider, you're right up.
Okay, so lines 173 to 183 are talking about using the gap departure as an example, and then when there's reverse flow, that the gap departure is improperly averaging days because it's simply reverse flow. But reverse flow days are completely ignored at SFO. It's as if reverse flow days don't exist at all. And which means all those airplanes landing on 1 and departing on 19 that are a couple hundred feet over Millbrae and Burlingame and Hillsborough do not count for anything. They're completely averaged out of the system, even though they can be 17% of the flights in a given year.
Is that an FAA issue or SFO?
I guess you'd think after 7 years I would know. It simply is.
It's an
It's
FAA.
when you look at the contours and you go, but I can stand in my kitchen porch and watch the airplanes right above me. And according to the contours, it's as if they don't exist. So it's the reverse of what 173 and 183 are talking about. I agree with it completely, what's written here. But can we add a section that talks about those other reverse flow days? And given a year, and then we learned on top of it that reverse flow is not just wind direction at SFO, it could be at Oakland. We know that when it's a bad fire season, they're using reverse flow a lot over us. This roundtable, even though it's in our original charter to look at emissions, we don't talk emissions. When you've got an aircraft taking off right over you, dropping particulate matter 2.5 or smaller, that's right above homes, and that particulate matter is going to fall down. Someday I hope the roundtable for all of us will be looking at ultrafine particulates, but for now, it's just that using an averaging system ignores reverse flow.
So I think that's kind of what is said there in that paragraph, is that it is saying take into account your non-normal flows and provide the experience that those communities have those days that are affected by those other flows. I don't know that we said, you know, we didn't say runway 1 and 19 operations specifically, but you know, it is saying that it is a majority, using an annual average day. I think this paragraph is saying, you know, it dilutes that experience during those days when you're in those other flows.
So would it be possible to add a couple more lines saying, and here's some other things we'd like you to consider? And it's runway 1 arrivals and runway 19 departures. 10 departures, not really, I think by the time it hits Foster City, I don't know, it could be the same as arrivals, especially if we're talking emissions. But I just would like to see something that reflects the fact that there are reverse flows that take off just hundreds of feet over homes. Homes that predate the airport.
But, so one thing to keep in mind is that those operations are included in the calculation of DNL, but they're diluted because the other operations dominate when you calculate DNL. And so they're not ignored completely, they are in the calculation. And so what we're saying here is that those operations are diluted using that annual average day.
And that's on line 179.
Right.
I still would prefer to see something that talks about reverse flow. Just one line in there that triggers reverse flow issues should be studied and included. The reality is only 3 homes in Millbrae qualify for insulation. It is illogical.
I think some of that's addressed on line 177, when SFO uses other runway configurations. They're not calling it directly reverse flow, but they're talking about it there.
I hear you, but I believe with the FAA we should be as specific as we possibly can be.
So we could add, I think we could add the word reverse flow, but I think what you are referring to, the theme of what you're talking about is reflected in here, and talking about departure on 28 left, 28 right, which is reverse flow. We're talking about diluting the impact of noise that occurs 90%. So we could perhaps, if this is what you're trying to accomplish or to get in there or to make it clearer to the FAA, is add the word reverse flow. I think that's fine. We could definitely add it.
At line 178.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right after configurations. Put in parentheses,
Would that work for you,
e.g.
Member
e.g.
Schneider?
reverse flow.
Would that address your concern?
I think so. It may not be as in your face as I might like it, but yeah, I
That's
think so.
okay, but
I would of course prefer much more in your face, but
Okay,
sure.
I understand. Thank you. Any, Member Boyd?
Forgive me, because I'm still learning too, but just this whole discussion of taking out the example of runways 28 left and right when they're not used for departures is exactly what we experienced in Pacifica the last few months, which was just horrendous for our community. So I'm concerned that if this is being taken out, then the impacts, and I understand that those runways aren't used during high winds or certain storm conditions too. So, how do we account for the extra impacts of these runway changes? If we're deleting them from if we're suggesting deleting them from the average calculation because they then affect other cities on the peninsula differently, how do we make sure that those are counted for the coast and the people in the gap?
So I don't see this, what's written here is taking anything out. What they're saying is, okay, you've got these operations on an annual average day down okay, but we're more interested in what happens on this day when this is happening. Okay, and that's what's trying to be stated here. So it's not saying take out the things that are currently occurring. It's more, let's address those things that occur on more like a daily or a seasonal or basis like that do occur but really get diluted with the annual average day. Did I even make you more confused? Sorry.
No, I think I understand. I'm just not quite sure how we're capturing, because those are the impacts that are more to us. So it seems like these averages are for all of us equally, right? And how this is calculated when a change might benefit some cities but impact more other cities.
But we're not talking about a change in what you just experienced. It's more about on the annual, throughout the year, this is how the airport operates. It operates in this configuration. Let's determine DNL with that configuration. in other days, it operates in this configuration, let's do DNL in that configuration. That's kind of what's being said here, because right now, we feel that those rarer configuration uses are diluted. That's why, anyway, if it's not written right, as what I just said, we can certainly change it, but that's what's intended, is to take those, like, 1 or 2 days that you do experience that and show what that day is like living there.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Does that answer your question? So it's really,
I think the first sentence addresses your concern, Christine, but the examples sort of confuse it a little bit. So maybe it could be clarified a bit. I think that comment's well taken. But you're getting back to the first sentence, what's actually happening in your community?
which line are you referring to?
Line 173, I think,
Okay.
is exactly what we're trying to say, right?
Okay.
Let's
Right.
actually look
Reducing
at
the
what's happening
denominator,
in
so
every
it
day
should
in our
make it
community.
better.
Exactly.
I think.
Maybe we need to point that out for those of us who are math impaired. It's reducing your denominator, so the number of days of gap departure will have a bigger impact, because it's going to erase those ones where they're flying on 1 or 19.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none,
So-
well, go ahead, you got enough?
Did we make any, we didn't make any changes to 173.
So 173, what is the
No,
suggestion?
I was just saying, 173 sets the stage.
Yeah.
I
Right,
think
right.
addresses what we're trying to say.
Right.
Okay.
So the only.
No
the
change
last-
to it.
So the last we have is 178, which is adding in reverse flow following the word configurations.
Okay.
Right.
Is that correct?
Are we all on
Any
the
other-
same?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Same
Okay,
page?
number 4?
Okay, perfect, thank you. All right, category number 5, decision-making noise metrics, and that's, here we are, starting on line 185, Gene?
Yeah, so the FAA currently uses DNL for basically all of their decision-making. And this is the point where they're asking, if not DNL, then what? Or in addition to DNL, what, right? So this is a time to then talk about what has been raised a few times here already, and hopefully we have in this area. So that's what they're looking for.
Perfect, so I think this is, Member Taylor, I think comments, she meant to talk about N above and LMAX, and that probably would be here as well, if we were to add them, and I think,
Well, she was in, wanted, it was 999.
and Member Schneider, I believe you mentioned you received a letter, LMAX and then above, Member O'Connor, so this has been, so let's talk about that. Or anything else that you would like to see other than DNL that we could include in our comments to the FAA.
So when through the chair, so in their question, they're talking about DNL, but they're talking about the average DNL that they make decision-making.
Correct. Using that averaging. That we just talked about.
1 day, pretend day,
Right,
average day,
right, the annual average day, yes.
for all their LEM compatibility, and so perhaps they should be, if we add the comment from Member Taylor about looking at single events and also the LMAX would be appropriate in that section also.
Well, we do have that already in lines 200 to 204. Talks about number of events above 50 decibels and the use of the single or sound exposure level.
Okay, I didn't realize
that-
that was if yes, specify, okay.
But her comment specifically was to go to, on line 99.
Right.
Which was, yeah.
But, and it's already
That's
included here, but,
Yeah.
right. Because we thought about saying, see other comment areas, but it's easier just to pull it in here again.
Okay,
So are there, I'm not unclear, are we making any changes to category 5?
yes, I think we are. We haven't had the discussion yet.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I thought we were wrapping up by now.
No, I'm not wrapping up. Member
Well,
Bang McInerney.
So, I'm not quite sure how to articulate this, but if the FAA is going to use DNL as a noise metrics, then we should also have a statement in that they should use it as a metrics consistent with studies of recommendation use. For example, the EPA study. So if the EPA study says that it should be 55 or less, it's inconsistent for the FAA to say actually it's 65. Am I making sense? That somehow we should be asserting that if you're going to use this, if you're going to be using this DNL, use it in a way that is supported by grand studies that have been done by the EPA.
Okay.
Well, and I think we do address that in section 7. And again, it's kind of unfortunate because this is kind of stepping us through it, right? And I think what you're saying is correct here, but if you are gonna use DNL, but that's not the questions being asked here, it's really about their use of DNL, and should they use something else, or should they have something in addition to DNL? But we do address exactly what you're saying in section 7, I believe.
I think I'm still stuck on section 3 and what he was saying about that one paragraph not quite fitting, and so that would make it a way to have that paragraph be more powerful to say that you've got this standard of 55, and yet you're not using it, you're not applying it.
They're going to be looking at it. Member Schneider.
This is, again, I think it fits here. Because we are now doing our airport noises using a NEAM, and a NEAM is doing a better job of measuring low-frequency noise, and at least with the preliminary reports are showing that it's picking up by far more exceedances of the 65 decibel. The decision-making noise metric should include a NEAM and other systems that use C-weighted noise. And that should help any of our communities in gathering that, because again, the letter writer to me said, look at the Milpitas number. I mean, that's pretty far away from the airport, but look at the number of exceedances it went in Milpitas just by going to a NEAM, which is a C-weighted measurement. So we should get that in there. And again, I'm just, to me, again, if when we talk at the legislative committee and we're trying to get some kind of win from the FAA, if we can't impact daytime operations, can we at least look at nighttime operations? And if you've got, that's one of the things GBAS may help with. If flights take out at 10 o'clock at night, they won't get pushed into the midnight to 3 a.m. time. But I will tell you, where I live, being on that 45-degree angle from runway 1 left, between midnight and 3 a.m., certain days of the week, sometimes 5 or 6 days of the week, it is almost constant noise. Enough windows closed or open, you cannot hear the television set, nor can you sleep. So somehow we have to look at duration of departures on that. And I do not, and maybe because SFO is incredibly unique from other airports, so the FAA doesn't consider us a sample to even base. This came up, I believe, when I was in DC at the National League of Cities. San Francisco, you're so unique. In fact, it was the noise woman who said this. SFO, your situations are so unique. We should not use your metrics for setting FAA regulations. And I believe the councilwoman from Palo Alto, who was sitting next to me, we both looked at each other and said, oh my gosh, on that. But we need to look at a NEAM, we need to look at C-weighted, and we need to look at duration, especially in the night time frame.
Okay, thank you. Gene, do you have any comments on using a NEAM
yeah, so
for
some,
this particular category?
Yeah,
right
so a NEAM is not a metric. A NEAM may or may not use C weighting. I believe it's probably an A-weighted thing at this point. And a NEAM is just another way to determine, through measurement, aircraft noise. And remember that the civil aviation noise policy resulted in the FAA using modeled noise levels, which includes an annual average day of all the flights. And so I think a NEAM in this discussion, I'm not sure it fits, because again, a NEAM is a way to determine through measurement a better representation of what is being heard on the ground, but the FAA uses the noise model. So a NEAM would be something other than AEDT maybe, for example. It's a model, it's a way of determining the noise level at a particular place on the ground.
Okay, thanks, Gene, for that clarification. Member Alvarez?
looking at the FAA website, DNL takes into account both the amount of noise from aircraft operation as well as the total number of operations flying throughout the day. And DNL, as you mentioned, that is accounted or measured throughout the year. We also discussed about maybe considering the duration as what Mayor Ann Schneider mentioned. Is there a limit that of operational flight on a daily basis that FAA consider to basically get the study, the DNL, to meet the 60 decibels, the dB? Because that's taken as part of the study to get for the based on the DNL metric is the aircraft noise and also the number of operations. But does the FAA limit the amount? So maybe SFO is flying above than the average operation, so that's why the decibel is going up more than the 60.
Yeah, so the FAA does not limit, in fact, they almost prohibit limiting the number of operations. And so what they do is they put the number of operations for the whole year into their noise model to determine where the noise is. So it's not that you limit how many operations in order to stay under 65 DNL, but that you actually determine with your given operations what is the DNL. So it's kind of the opposite of, I think, where you were going.
Okay, thank you. Member Schneider, you still have a comment? Or?
Through the chair, I'm catching up with my letter here, and I may not be saying this the right way because I'm still grappling with this. The recommendation from members of my community are an N above metric and a threshold that is specific to ground-based noise versus an N above metric that may have a different threshold from different airport locations. Does that make sense?
Well, we have N above in here, in this description here.
But apparently it's the threshold too, something that would more adequately reflect the ground-based noise situation. And I dearly wish there were a few more airports like us, so we'd have some partners in this.
So thresholds are discussed in section 7.
Okay. I mean, I bow to Jean's better knowledge of this, but as long as we're getting into that direction, because we may be the only ones commenting on it.
Well, they have hundreds of comments already.
Member Klein, you mentioned something, if we were to tell them DNL doesn't work, what we think should work.
Right, we have to place it, put it here.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
If the FAA insists on using DNL,
Yeah.
is this the right part of the document? So if the FAA insists on using DNL, we believe that number should be considerably lower than 65. So is that something that we should state here?
I would suggest again in section 7.
I keep missing the sections.
We'll get there eventually.
Yeah. I mean, that's a challenge, right?
But that's the crux of this, and we're getting close to that.
Yeah,
Is do we have the level right?
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so I think probably it's good that we all asking these questions, and I'm really thankful that you are here with us and clarifying that this is coming up in the next section and all, but rest assured, after we're done with all the sections, if there's something that's not covered, then that you really please bring it in, and we will discuss it, and we'll try to include it. So, okay, any more on this? Okay, seeing none, you captured what you needed there.
I don't have any notes for 5.
Okay,
That's right.
nothing in there.
Get any
Okay,
changes.
perfect. Moving on. We are at number 6 at this point, correct? Communication. I'm going to turn it over to Eugene to briefly talk about this category.
So communication is something that the FAA has really been dinged on since really the implementation of the metroplexes, not just here in Northern California, but all over the country. And So they are looking for how they can better communicate proposed changes, or how they can better communicate, given the noise environment. So this is all about communication and, ways for the FAA to do better.
Thank you, Gene. And as you could see in our proposed draft responses, we talk about early process and transparency, as well as the CADEX usage and the need to minimize using CADEX, Kathleen, or at least not use it as an excuse to.
Actually, we go into more detail, CADEX
In the next section, okay. All right.
But you
so
do to address
Number
it here,
7.
but.
Number 7, all right, so I'm jumping ahead of here of myself, but that's something that
mention it,
really
though.
I think, was a good response in there. So I'm going to open it up if anyone has any comments, addition, deletions. I don't see any. Vice Chair?
My only comment, Chair, is under the last 3 comments where we have none. I think we're saying none because we've addressed those elsewhere in the report. And I think we should say that rather than none. I think we ought to say addressed elsewhere in the report and maybe stipulate where. None implies as though we're agreeing with it. It could be implied as silent acquiescence.
Okay.
And that's not what we're doing.
And this is line 2?
Well, I'm looking at line 252,
250.
257, 260.
Okay. That work, Kathleen?
I'm sure we can direct them to where we have commented.
Yeah, I think we can just say something along the lines of addressed elsewhere, and for those that we can. Some we may not have addressed, so we can't say that if we haven't, but yes.
Yeah, if
that's
we have no
fine.
comments, I'm fine, but if we have addressed it,
Right.
I'd rather
I
just say
agree.
addressed elsewhere.
Yeah, and I think we've said that in other places, so we can,
Okay, thanks,
Maybe
Vice Chair.
take
That's
that
a
as
good
an
suggestion.
overall comment
Yes.
for
Yeah.
the whole document.
Okay, very good. Then moving on to category number 7, the NEPA and land use threshold established using DNL or for another cumulative noise metric. Gene, please take it away.
Yeah, so this is, I think, where we've been trying to get to all night based on the comments, but this is about the use of the 65 DNL contour for land use compatibility. The FAA currently sees that all land uses are compatible outside the DNL 65. They also have a significance threshold under NEPA or the National Environmental Protection Act policy that a 1.5 dB increase within the 65 DNL area is considered as a significant impact, and any changes less than that or outside of the 65 DNL that is also less than, or that's outside the DNL and or less than 1.5 is not a significant impact. So their questions here are in regard to that. Are those the right levels and the right metric? So do we recommend other cumulative metrics other than DNL, and what are the levels?
Thanks, Gene. Okay, I'm gonna open the floor for discussion, questions, comments on this category. I think you could see our comments starting at line 277.
For those of us who are new, can you show us a map? Like what is included in this now and what is not?
In the
noise
65
contours?
DNL?
Yeah.
I mean, what geographical area?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can get you a picture of that, I think.
Flying Jesus.
Are you on Zoom?
I think Bert was good enough.
Bert, can you bring up one of your?
Okay, while Bert is looking, any other comments or suggestion, discussion on this?
Yeah, let Bert look it up. Okay.
But I think the comments here really captured a lot of the stuff that has been discussed and being requested, especially outside the 65 DNL boundary contour, right? And I think really what's important for me, I thought, like using CADEX by the FAA as it's being used now, we are requesting that is really be looked over, and because a lot of stuff happened through that when you're doing procedures.
Yeah. If I could give a little background,
Yes.
maybe. The FAA, and only from what I've read and talked to people. I don't have any official training. I'm so sorry. But when the FAA is changing flight procedures, they have a detailed process by which to do it. I think the manual must be a couple of 100 pages long. And the process includes community involvement. We already talked, we didn't even talk about that, did we? It was number 6, we already covered that, sorry. But I guess I was, oh, do you have that, Bert?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's the green line, yeah. That's the area in which is currently 65.
And as I recall, it used to be much further out, Bert,
Yeah, it used to go
towards
to
the ocean more
like
in years
18
past.
or something. Right? Used to go out to like 18, right?
Yes, in 1983, the original one that we've been reporting from was huge. It's the best way to explain it. And then also during COVID, shrank immeasurably. So we're now coming back out.
So it would
It
have gone over your city a lot more in years past.
So we have heard comments already about if they are to use DNL to lower it, maybe, because they have asked for that to be in here. So maybe we do add that concept in here. Right, that if you are going to, go back to what the EPA had recommended back in 1974 as a minimum and go down to 55 or something like that, right? So I think the rest is adequately addressed there, but I don't see that as, I think that if we specifically said that based on what we heard tonight, that might be a,
Where would you suggest that?
probably after 279. If you're asking for it to be completely revised, and then say, however, if you continue to use this metric, go down to those lower noise levels.
Is that?
Does that work? Yeah.
Mr. Chair, could I add 2 more comments? This is where some of the comments or recommendations made in that letter in 2021 may be appropriate. So could I ask the committee to look at that to see if we should include some of the specific recommendations here? Gene,
Problem is that we can't meet again, and so we need to decide tonight what to put in.
My counter to that, and I appreciate
Okay.
that, is that every recommendation in this letter was approved by this roundtable. It's already been discussed in some detail at the legislative subcommittee and then at the roundtable in total and approved. So the comment, I guess, is whether those recommendations are relevant to the item being asked, and if they are, then perhaps they ought to be included. And I don't know if we need to meet again to do so. That's my question, I guess.
Do you want to extract them, even though we attach in the letter in this category specifically?
Yes, because I think some of these recommendations may apply specifically to this
So
category.
let me ask a question, and I understand your rationale that this has been approved by the roundtable in 2021, previous members. I don't believe anyone might have objection, but let me ask current members if anyone has any objection, basically after we vote on this today, to include excerpts from that
If they're
2021 letter
appropriate.
specific to this category that we could include in our comments. Anyone has any objection to that? Kathleen, does that work for you? We could work that in? Gene?
Yeah, you'll have to make it as part of the motion too, that
Okay.
those can actually go in.
Could I have former Chairman Ortiz's comment on that? Because I know he's very instrumental in this letter, so.
Thank you, Mr. Royce. My concern about what you're recommending to add the letters, that none of us have the letter. And even though, yes, we approved it way back when, things have changed. And some of the things on the letter may not be relevant or may not be up to date. So for me, I'm a little uncomfortable without looking at the letter to vote to include it. So I'm going to dissent on that one.
That's a valid point. I mean, it is a different body because new members, but I'm reluctant not to get specific, not to include some of these because they appear to be somewhat specific and on point. But your concern, I guess, Member Ortiz, is delegating to the executive committee the power to effectively extract those appropriate measures to include in this letter without it coming back. Could we do so and then forward it, Kathleen, and forward it to the entire body? No, we could not do that. We have to meet in public session. Okay.
So I think the other way, we could probably add reference to our attached letter and the document. And just kind of, you draw their attention to
In this
that,
section?
and you could do sections
I'm
on that.
fine with that. I do not want to propose something that members may be uncomfortable with. And the point's well taken. If you haven't seen it, it's hard to say yes on it. I appreciate that. So I would support what you're recommending.
Okay.
Just
Very
make
good.
reference to the letter.
I'm sorry?
Well,
Mentioning it.
you're gonna have to make it as part of the motion, and then people may not accept it, but you'll, right?
So we're gonna add reference in this category. We're gonna put a comment, C attached document.
Yeah.
Whatever we attached in there, right?
That was the
Okay.
recommendation, yeah.
Sounds good?
Through the chair, does Mr. Royce's possession of this letter, is it possible if there's a paragraph, a specific paragraph that pertains to this, that you could read out to the body and then it could be added in?
I'm not sure I could do that without it. Again, I just saw the letter again. I remember going through it 2 years ago.
Okay.
I just got it at 6 o'clock, and they're all bullet points, and there's like 25, 30 different bullet points. So I don't know which ones without going through it, but some, just looking at them, would appear to be appropriate in terms of suggested alternatives there. But I think by just drawing reference, and the letter is suggested, is that this committee has previously commented on different metrics that should be used. Please see letter so-and-so written on such date, might be appropriate. Is that what, I think that's
Yeah.
what you're.
I think that's safe, and that's why I asked, and I alluded to the fact that many members, including myself, were not party to the vote in 2021, and just want to make sure everybody is comfortable. And I think Member Ortiz raises a valid point, and I think we have a way to draw their attention to it without having anyone being uncomfortable. Is that okay with everyone? Seems like? Perfect.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I might have too much, like Ricardo, I might have too much pride in this letter, because a lot of work went into it, and it was well-received by the public, and I think it reflected the sentiment of the community quite well at the time, so I hate to have that lost. So, but I think the recommendation.
Thank you. Thank
My,
you
my
for-
second comment, Mr. Chairman, if I might, and this might be a personal peeve, but on line 277 and 278, I know the words annoyance is a word of art, work of art, a word of art, and implies certain studies and used in all the legal studies, but it still annoys me to read that people are highly annoyed when this is much more impactful than that. People's health are affected, their mortality is affected, school kids' health, their learning skills are affected. Is there a way we can somehow make that more explicit, that we're not, it's more than just being annoyed. You know, this is having an impact. So I don't know how you do that, but that word highly annoyed just annoys me, put it that way.
High level of
We actually
annoyance.
have that somewhere.
Well, that's the FAA's policy. That's the wording that's right out of it, right? So, you know, that's what they're trying to address. So that's why it's in there, because that's, you know, what the NES showed was that people are more people are highly annoyed well outside the 65 than previously.
Could we footnote that and just footnote it with the
That's
comment
easy to
that from recent studies, that the word annoyance, while industry accepted word, is not meant to undermine the impact on the health of the fact that it represents more than just annoyance in the traditional sense. It impacts health of students, of residents, of people with disabilities. Can we just footnote that to reemphasize the fact that this is,
It should be more than annoyance.
yes, the word annoyance to the layman reading it is like, well, you're annoyed, so what? You know?
Right.
But it's more than that.
So I thank you for bringing that up, and I agree with you. It's not annoyance, it's a lot more than that. But Kathleen, I think we had captured that to a
We
certain
did.
extent.
It's in number
under the-
10, but let me read it to you
Okay.
now, since it's on point.
further out. I'm sorry.
Number 10 is the miscellaneous section, and it talks about miscellaneous stuff, but in response to part of it, it says, that quoting from the 2016 Roundtable Initiative response to the FAA as part of the NorCal initiative. We said then, as part of that report, aircraft noise is a health issue. If aircraft noise is only seen as annoying, quotes, to residents, it would overlook the well-documented detrimental effects of noise on the health of the members of communities underlying flight paths. Documented in peer-reviewed scientific journals, noise adversely and seriously affects blood pressure, cardiovascular, and other health issues in adults. Impacts to children show the aircraft noise can result in an increase in children's blood pressure and can cause negative impacts on children's education, as shown by lower levels in cognitive testing, task perseverance, long-term memory, short-term memory, and reading achievement. And it goes on to say that today, many peer-reviewed scientific journals recognize the deleterious effects of nighttime noise and recognize that sleep disturbances can lead to serious health concerns. The very real and very serious health concerns to residents, as well as the economic costs from nighttime airplane noise exposure, necessitates bold action on the part of the FAA and the airline industry.
Thank you. That addresses my concern.
Can I go on to my,
Oh,
one more
please,
thing,
go ahead.
because it's my favorite in the whole.
Okay.
No longer can we accept that adding a few extra track miles is a valid reason for awakening residents multiple times in a night. No longer can we accept that avoiding a few minutes of flight delay is a valid reason for awakening residents multiple times in the night. No longer can we ignore options that might help prevent awakening residents multiple times in the night. Then we go on to talk about some of the options that we might want to consider recommending.
So there's some in-your-face kind of thing, comments and stronger language that where we believed it was appropriate, managed to insert those. Member Alvarez and Member O'Connell.
In the mic, sorry.
Thank you. So this section, we are looking into any other means of measuring the sound. In addition to the DNL, I read that the LEQ, which is the equivalent sound level, measures the average acoustic energy over a period of time to take account of the cumulative effect of multiple noise events. This could, for example, provide a measure of the aggregate sound of a location that has airplane flyovers throughout the day. LEQ is defined as the level of continuous sound over a given time period that would deliver the same amount of energy as the actual varying sound exposure. So if this type of metric we can add to, in addition to the DNL metric study or level of getting the noise level.
So DNL is actually an LEQ.
Okay.
DNL, the only difference between the 24-hour LEQ and DNL is that you add 10 decibels to every nighttime noise. And so LEQ would be less than DNL. Same as CNEL, you would add 3 times to the evening operations. So CNEL and DNL are actually LEQs, just with these penalties, if you will, for evening and nighttime noise.
Thank you. Yeah, because I read DNL is SNL somewhere in the line, but not LEQ. So it is the same. Thank you for clarifying that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Member Alvarez, Member O'Connell, and then, yeah, I will go there, and I'll come to
And I'm hoping I'm on the right section, but on line 302, 309, 318, I believe that instead of the comments done on line 302, DBI should be lowered based on current and ongoing noise studies and health impact studies. And that might be just a little short blurb that we can put in instead of a no comment, that we believe it should be lowered based on ongoing noise and health studies. Because it's asking
So on
if we
three, on
should,
302?
yeah,
That's
on
what you're thinking?
302 instead of none.
Yeah, we could repeat or
You
put
know,
that in there.
because it's asking, should we change the DNL metric? You know, or the level of the DNL, and we should. And, you know, again, on 309 and 318 and 322, we should just put that in or see supporting data.
Could you read that again for me, please?
Well, what she's, I think, saying is the same thing that Dave Pine was saying, and that is put in, you know,
DNL
that
should
if
be
you
lower.
are going to stick with it, use a lower level, and she's saying repeat that down there. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Based on, and they say why, so it'd be based on current and ongoing noise studies and health impact studies, because right now we're basing it on their whim, and then the 1974 EPA study that was lower than what they picked. So that would reference back to that study and all the other studies that we've looked at in the past.
Can I try to repeat that? So I get it. So if, making it sound better, but if you're gonna continue to use DNL, you should use a lower level that's based on current and ongoing studies, that reflect current and ongoing studies.
Studies, noise studies and health impact studies.
Noise and health impact study.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I think that could be repeated on those three instead of the no comment section. Over and over again.
Okay, thank you. All right, Member Frank Maganay, and then Member Schneider.
I want to go back to Member Royce's desire to bring in that letter from 2021 more fully into this report. I think most of us are new here. There are, I think, 8 of us who are brand new to this roundtable. I think 6 of us are newly elected, which means, I think we're all pretty brilliant, but really and truly not so much when it comes to this topic. If you're saying that 2021 letter was a culmination of solid work done by the roundtable at that time, I think that should be honored. It's institutional knowledge that hasn't been passed forward, but should definitely not be lost, given that this is the FAA's first time in asking this kind of feedback.
No, thank you for your comment, and we are including it in our comments. However, we are including it as an attachment, and Vice Chair Royce was suggesting take an excerpt from it.
And I'd love to see that actually happen, because if the FAA is getting, hundreds, maybe thousands of responses, I don't know. Will they really go to an attachment and read through that?
Yes, they will.
They really will? Okay.
Yeah, because that's how you enter them in. You actually, it enters in as as a
Okay.
separate document.
So it will not be lost
Okay.
on the FAA. And they will definitely go through that. And we're gonna reference it where it's applicable,
Okay.
that please see.
It's just a recognition that most of us are new here.
Yeah. No, I really appreciate
And
your
we
comments.
haven't had our Noise 101 training yet.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your comments, and I could definitely concur that we are all smart and on top of our game. But clearly, obviously, it's challenging, a lot of new information, and I remember when I was first joining the roundtable, what are they talking about? It's just a lot to take, but actually, looking at the room and the contribution and the participation, I think we are doing very well, and you are very caught up on a lot of stuff, even minus the Noise 101. But it's forthcoming. All right. Member Schneider.
Okay, mine are along the line of what Terry suggested, member. But on 302, 309, 318, and 322, this section is saying, should we use DNL or should we use something else? We want something else. We should be including, at minimum, the metrics that are going to pick up low-frequency noise. So in each one of these categories, rather than none, it should be, we don't want DNL. If you are going to use DNL, go to 50 decibels or less. I like the 45 number that's earlier in there. But part 2 is DNL does not serve the environs of San Francisco Airport and most likely many other airports. You need to include low-frequency noise, you need to look at the duration, you need to look at the averaging. I know we've talked about it in earlier areas, but it needs to be said in this area. And it's probably the same response for 302, 309, 318, and 322.
Okay. Gene, what,
Well, do we have that response? So we need to add to what Terry O'Connell's comment was, right? So we need to add, what she's suggesting is that we include low-frequency noise. Do we want to include number above in this as well?
yeah.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Number
Gene.
above, number of events above, we mentioned that earlier.
We can say that, but given that we're one of the only voices talking about low-frequency noise in the country.
I said low-frequency noise first.
Yeah,
So
but
said
I
include.
like the repetition of it. If it's short and brief, but it's saying, these are the metrics we would like to see. And Terry had mentioned to me earlier, if there was a way to somehow include as an attachment, the spectral analysis work that was done and published in 2020. I know the airport has some disagreements with it, but that is a valid study and a valid measurement.
It is attached. It
Okay,
will be attached.
great. I will tell you, I absolutely love what you wrote in section 9.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay,
I'm sorry,
Member Holland.
Where are we?
okay, one moment, please.
Just to finish up.
So we're adding in,
So we're going to go for a lower DNA that's based on noise studies and impact studies, blah, blah, and as well as
including
including,
low-frequency noise, number of above.
If I could add to that too, the unique situation that we have, that we now believe that low-frequency noise does not attenuate, disappear. It actually grows as it moves up the hill. They need to do some study. They need to do their homework. And if that impacts the change in the contours, so be it.
Okay, so we include in that
Yeah.
Perfect.
low frequency
Yeah.
noise in there, and then we'll leave it at that,
Yeah.
and then they could
302,
definitely.
309, 318, and 322.
Member Holland.
Okay, I just have some kind of wordsmithing recommendations. So for the intro on starting at line 277, I would flip what you're saying, the order of it. So I would say, and separate it into two sentences so that you kind of come out with more of a bang. So I would say, the FAA's previous assumptions are based on outdated, inaccurate premises, and noise policy should be completely revised, period. NAS data shows the high level of annoyance, and kind of flip it and have them be two separate sentences. And then I would also maybe, because I think the points about what annoyance and our perspective on the definition of annoyance, maybe we could call out that we have thoughts on that in section 10 for them to, a little preview of that might make sense.
Did you get that?
No, I didn't get it.
Okay, so you're gonna, she's suggesting is to make two sentences out of the 277 to 279 response and start with the second part of that sentence first. Say that needs to be completely revised, and then say that the NES data show that, the annoyance is far outside 65. And then she's also recommending that you add some of section 10, or refer to section 10 in that it's also more than just annoyance.
So
See
referring to
section 10.
section 10.
Yeah.
Okay. Got that? Could go back to the other. Okay. We are at 9:15, and we still have a few to go, and I'm gonna suggest a 5 minutes recess, and then we get back. Any objections to 5 minutes recess? All right. With that, we're gonna recess for 5 minutes.
Are we done with 7?
We're done with 7.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you, Angela.
I always enjoy that acronym.
I am like, wait, EPA.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I had to look at
It
it.
feels like kind of clock chasing. It's like I could always identify when else
Right?
I ask if everyone could take back their seats, please,
It's funny, because I hadn't really noticed
starting.
the airplane interesting. Now I'm like, well, I guess I'm like hyper aware.
Is it just me or is it getting cold in the schools? In here, how about
Okay, we're back.
straight through those doors?
I'm sorry?
Kayak, they're the city. Yeah, nice to meet you.
Okay. So we are back, and next category is category number 8, FAA noise threshold using single event on operational metrics.
Well, no, I do
Gene?
like it.
Still muted. Okay, so, this is really the FAA looking at if they use single event or other operational metrics. Operational metrics we've talked about is like number of events above a certain level. And one thing that I think we wrote in here is just number of events in some places, regardless of the noise level. But, looking at, lessons learned and what people are experiencing, what are thoughts on thresholds using single event or operational metrics?
Thank you. So before I open it, I think my comment would be probably just if we could capture where we reference these things, just see comment this, comment.
Line 330.
Yeah.
So instead of just see our comments in other sections, actually state which sections to
Yeah.
turn their attention.
Anyone has any other comments on this? Okay, seeing none, we're gonna cruise through this one. Go to 9, FAA noise threshold for low frequency event. Gene?
Yeah, so this one, if you read it closely enough, it's really focused on commercial space transportation and the low frequency content of those engines that are used for commercial space. Anyway, just I'll say that we extended this to be, no, let's open it up to low frequency noise of even what's occurring at airports, not limit it to commercial space. So I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. Comments, discussion on this category? I think we captured it pretty well. Member Schneider, good? I see
And this is where the ground-based noise study is
Correct.
referenced.
Okay, perfect. So, moving on to the next category, number 10, miscellaneous. And this is where a lot of strong language was used.
Yeah, so this is intended just to be, what else do you want us to know or think about as we're updating our civil aviation noise policy? So
Okay, any comments?
it was pretty much read earlier for you.
I don't see Member Schneider thinking about it. Okay.
It's because it's not noise, so I know I will probably get ignored. But the FAA came to the roundtable in October 2019 and said, oh, wow, we just finished studies of our jets and discovered they create by far more ultrafine particulate matter, which goes deep into the lungs, triggers asthma, respiratory illnesses. At the UC Davis event last month, they had a whole panel, an amazing panel on health impacts and the other airports that are doing studies on this. So I know we're only doing noise, but maybe in this miscellaneous is FAA, take what your scientists found in October and report it out in October 2019 and do the next step of research on that. So for all of us, with the airplanes flying over us, they're dropping ultrafine particulates, wind dispersal, there's a blah, blah, blah. But let them do a little bit more study. And for those of you in East Palo Alto, Foster City, you could be at risk, and definitely Daly City, Brisbane, the overflight, the low altitude overflights on that. And that's my semi-unofficial 40 years working in the environmental field, but this is not my specialty area.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we're good on 10? Okay. Member Ball? You're good? Okay, let's go move on then to category.
Antonio had one.
Oh, sorry. No worries. Oops. Member
It'll be
Lopez.
quick. It'll be quick, promise. I guess I just have a general question of our approach. And I really do appreciate, as a writer, like the language here and their petition. I think it, yeah, anyways, it's not an English class. But I just wanted to ask about, so I know, kind of the tongue-in-cheek way that we're quoting annoyance, but I guess for expediency, since it's an accepted term, we're still operating through it, right? Would it make sense to encourage them to adopt a new term that's a little less misleading? I mean, that seems like maybe kind of semantics, but to colleague Royce's point, it seems annoying, right? Not to be, but anyways, just something to think about. Could we also encourage them to conceive of a new term, one that kind of doesn't come off as, what's the word? Not patronizing. Yeah, like undermining what's otherwise like important points about the impacts of air noise.
So I would say minimizing the actual impact. The word annoyance really does not capture the impact, and it minimizes, I don't know, something along those lines.
I think it'd be good for them to use the term noise impacts rather than noise annoyance, because they are impactful and they are, disturbing to human and natural life.
So we could
Well,
add,
not that we're not
we could
natural,
add.
but-
Just a
Jean, let
couple
me-
comments. One is, annoyance was done because they wanted to update what was done in the 70s with the Schultz curve and the annoyance. So they did that purposefully. I don't know, I'm not saying not to put something in here that says, get away, it's more than annoyance. I think we've already said that. And then the other thing that was just mentioned was impacts. And I'll tell you, the FAA has a very narrow definition of what impact is. And again, that's what triggers NEPA, is a, change of a threshold. And so I think we want to be careful in the use of the word impact, but like health effects is good, noise effects is good. Those things are real because you are affected by these things. And as a community, you can say impacts, but just know that the FAA thinks of impact as a very narrow definition.
Okay, so I think thank you for clarifying that. So it's important, like everything that we do, is to know who's our audience is or who we're addressing. So if that have a different meaning to the FAA, even our intent is one thing, but it doesn't matter what our intent, it's what the receiver see it at and understand it and what that term means to them. So thank you for bringing that up, and I think we ought to be cognizant what our words mean to the FAA, because that's who we're addressing. Do I agree on that? Okay, thank you. All right.
So we're going to add in anything here?
No, we'll leave it. Okay, we okay? We're not adding anything, we're leaving it? Okay, thank you. So category number 11, literature review.
Can I make one more comment? Just as an add-on, we are writing another letter that deals with congressional reauthorization of FAA, and in that letter, we can include topics that may not be germane to this specific letter. So just keep that in mind.
Thank you, Vice Chair, and that's, in the beginning, I really alluded to that there's so much more that we will be asking the FAA, and we'll be advocating to change and for them to look at things differently. But remember, we're doing what they are asking for, and this is the place and the time for this. There's more that we could definitely continue to ask for and advocate for. Thank you. Okay, so number 11, literature review.
Yeah, so this is just the FAA asking if we can identify any studies or data regarding civil aviation noise not already identified by the FAA in their information. And so that's what this section is addressing.
Okay, so you could see our responses or comments, draft comments starting on line 423 on this. Is there any comments? Member Schneider, you still have your name up? Okay.
Except at the UC Davis Symposium, and I bet you Darlene Yapley has all the information, were a bunch of European studies that we may want to bring attention to in our comments. But I would leave that to our unofficial member from Palo Alto.
Okay, thank you. All right. That is the comments, and now we move on to the cover letter. I trust that you have read the cover letter, and does anyone disagree? Is there any member who disagrees with the content or the concept of the letter. I don't see any.
Through the chair, what page is it again on the packet?
I'm sorry?
Okay.
31.
Oh, I'm sorry.
31 and 32.
Okay, I'll give the minute for everyone to kind of take a look at that.
Does it CC Congressman Mullen?
Are we all good with
What-
it?
While people are looking at
Okay.
that, can I just ask, one thing that Vice Chair Royce mentioned that I didn't see mentioned in here at all, and I'm not sure where it would fit in, is just the concept of environmental justice and the fact that our poorer communities tend to be closer to the airport and, you know, have less ownership and less ability to affect, you know, their surroundings and their homes. Is that something that we want to bring attention to, whether it's a study or something just to make sure that we're looking out for the most vulnerable?
Just real quick, couple things on that. First, it is in that letter that Alroy says alluded to or referenced throughout the night. It is in there there's like 4 or 5 places that environmental justice is mentioned in there, so we are by referencing that letter. Second is that environmental justice is part of NEPA currently, and it's, I would contend that it doesn't fit well in this, and it probably fits better with what Al was saying earlier in reauthorization. If you want to emphasize more of the environmental justice and inclusion and those sorts of things, that might be a better venue.
Okay. Yes, sorry.
Can I just add to the cover letter, the quieter skies? Can we just add safer and quieter skies?
I'm sorry, say that again, I didn't hear you.
Can we just, to the cover letter, instead of quieter skies, could we add safer and quieter skies?
Oh, in the logo on the bottom right-hand corner.
Mm-hmm.
It's just been the logo that.
Sorry, right here, on the last sentence.
Line 37 is.
Line 37, sorry.
Safety might bring in a bunch of other issues that
Okay.
they would cite that they're noisier because they're being safer.
Okay.
So I'm not sure we'd.
Yeah, believe me, the FAA takes safety as number one, and and anytime we tell them anything about reducing noise, they tell you safety is our first.
Safety is why.
All right.
So they are very safety cognizant.
Which they should be.
Yeah.
Which they should be.
But that's,
And
but,
they
but
are.
that's
No,
their top priority,
seriously.
really.
Okay.
That's their top priority, so,
Okay.
to be fair to them, that's their top priority. But thank you.
Friendly are.
Okay, so we're good with the cover letter then at this point?
I think we're ready for a motion.
Do they want CCs to anybody else?
Oh, okay. So, as you see in the cover letter, we have CC, the members of the roundtables, member of Congress and SFO roundtable area, California elected legislators and state senate in the SFO roundtable area, as well as San Francisco, San Mateo County elected official, San Francisco mayors, all members of San Francisco and San Mateo County Board of Supervisors, FAA Regional Admin, Dr. Rachel Gervin. Is there anybody else that you think should be included in the CC of the letter that we have not included? Yes, Member Schneider.
The SFO airport commissioners.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, that's good. All right, perfect. So with that, I'm gonna go ahead then at this point and move on to open it for public for comments on item number 3. And with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Ms. Montes. Then after that, we'll come back if there's any more discussion, and I would definitely would be looking to entertain a motion to approve the letter with the modification that have been discussed and we documented and we captured.
Thank you, Chairman Hindi. So at this moment, we do have 2 virtual hands raised from members of the public. So I will first call on Aaron Macias, followed by Darlene Yapley. Aaron Macias, please go ahead.
Good evening. I'm Erin Macias from Pacifica. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Good evening. My first comment is to suggest that before you close public comment, that you look for callers and explain how to raise your hand to comment. I was on my cell phone traveling. We are here to comment. Following that, the academic language used in this roundtable is truly over the heads of most of the general community. We are severely impacted by noise and sound vibration and the health effects in Pacifica. It is documented. We have had it monitored. We have suggested lowering the decibels. We have commented. We've corresponded for like 6 years now. Please include our data, our concerns, our comments. We are an impacted overflight community. I would also like to say that the FAA and the SFO Roundtable have really not done a great job at community outreach. Before NextGen was rolled out, there was no instruction to our city representative on how to outreach to the residents, so we had very low participation. When we bought our homes, we were not impacted, and now we are. Their health impacts. Where are the disclosures? So the FAA is exempt, and that is in it of itself its own issue. Please do amend the language in this document to further demonstrate to the FAA that this issue impacts residents who are not properly represented in the report, but they have contributed to the discussion. Specifically, page 35, line 96 to 99, change that from none to reference the prior studies and the comments submitted by Pacifica residents from 2015 through today. Thank you.
Thank you. I will then call on Darlene Yapley. Ms. Yapley?
Thank you for the draft document. Subsonic is omitted in question 1. Subsonic is the context of virtually the entire comment document, so please consider adding it. Don't be wobbly in the wording. If you want and above LMAC C weighting for decision-making, then say it. Throughout the document, there's observations like DNL is inadequate, we need a better metric, but that doesn't state replace it with and above LMAC C weighting for decision-making. The Roundtable's April 2021 letter stated, number 1, replace CNEL DNL, such as and above. Number 2, employ the NES, not the FICON-Schultz curve. Number 3, disallow Schultz for NEPA and Part 150. Number 4, add low frequency noise. Number 5, not a 24-hour average noise metric. Please use these excerpts from the 2021 comment in the most current and direct way is how they were shared. Intentionally use the FAA language for metrics. You're going to be misled. Line 20, 200 is close. Metrics used to make decisions. Thank you for making that clear. But take out this whole bit about, along with additional metrics, reporting individual aircraft using SEL, should be LMAX and C weighting. We need to have consistent language. Use Member Taylor's comment with some updates that I'll give. Do not use the term in any way supplemental metrics. Those mean understanding only. It is not for decision making. That is not what we want. Vague wording around metrics is 116, line 192, 113, 129, 188, 200, and 280. Cecilia's addition was excellent. One edit on the second part. The noise policy should have a new decision-making metrics and above LMAX C weighting for NEPA eligibility and land use. Do not say soundproofing, just say mitigation because that is general. And you should also reference in line 99 your other context, which is line 139, 190, and 280. Lastly, I want to say the DNL 65 is at 12.3% annoyance. The NES curve, if you calculated it at 12.3% annoyance, would be 46 DNL. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Yapley. And with that, Chairman, we do not have further hands raised for this item through Zoom. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, and thank you for the members of the public who commented. And now I'm going to bring it back to the roundtable for any further discussions or comments. Member Boyd. Member Boyd, you have your name up?
No, it's not.
I'm sorry, okay. All right. Anybody else has any additional comments on what we have? Member Schneider.
Thank you, Chair. I support everything Ms. Yapley said. Kathleen, is there a way that we can incorporate the specifics? I didn't catch all of her line numbers, but perhaps she can send it to you, the line numbers, but.
We have a recording.
There we go.
Okay.
I think we should be as specific as possible and to take away any wiggle room.
Okay.
And I think she did that job.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. What?
Member Ortiz, you have something?
So I like her comments about naming the other measurements. Is there any reason why we shouldn't do that according?
No, I think we could definitely, no? Kathleen,
Yeah,
then?
no, I would have to sit down and listen again to exactly what she
No,
said. so I
I'm
understand.
talking about, so I'm not saying in general include everything, because I'd have to go, like you said, I'd have to go back and review it, but there's one very specific thing that she recommended, which is naming the alternate measurement
And above
metrics, the
LMAX.
alternate metric, yes.
And above
And I thought that was a
LMAX.
very good idea, and I'm just curious if there's any objection from you guys to that.
I don't have any objection.
So I would recommend, again, I don't have all the details, and we're getting ready to vote on it, so if we were going to do that, then we'd have to, anyway, I'd be uncomfortable saying, yes, let's include all her recommendations, but I certainly would want to include that one specific one.
Yeah, no,
I caught a good number of them, but I missed a couple of the line numbers. I did get the language change. Yeah.
okay. So we will review, and we're basically talking about the metrics here, to incorporate the metrics that were relayed by Ms. Yap.
And I think her point was, wherever we say we don't like DNL, we need to, in addition to that, recommend the ones we do like, and I think that's a great point.
Yeah. Yes, Member Schneider.
Oh, I think her comment on if we're specific in saying insulation as the only mitigation, I think there could be a range of mitigations on that. One of the mitigations we're talking about, if we really want to be able to sleep at night, is to make it much more difficult to, or easier to fly out earlier in the evening and more difficult or not at night. So mitigation can mean many things. So I like her comment about not being too specific as defining mitigation as only insulation programs. So in some case, she's broadening what the recommendation is, and in other cases, like and above CMAX, disallow Schultz, add up low-frequency noise, don't use the 24-hour noise metric, and her comment about if you did the math for DNAL, it should be 46 point
So I support.
something. So there was some good stuff in there.
Yeah,
Just was very fast.
definitely there is, and I support being specific. If we all in agreement that DNL is not adequate, and to be specific of what is, or what we believe is, and what we implore the FAA to do. So those we could capture. But the rest of it is not something that I think we are ready to discuss. Remember,
And I think that where we can be specific on those items would be up to staff to input it, insert it where it's appropriate on the line items.
So give staff the okay.
And
Okay.
pardon me, through the chair, we did have a last-minute hand that went up for public comment, but Chairman, I'll leave that to your discretion if you'd like to go back.
let's go ahead and do that.
So I will call on Public Member Mahdi. Go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. My name is Marty Astrop. I live in Pacifica. I'd like to reiterate what a previous commenter said regarding that there's no comment in line item 99, which is for overflight communities. I think there's been a lot of advocacy to include a lot of the concerns seen by the communities near where I am, especially communities where in the last decade I've been noticing increased overflights. I'd like to see a little bit more stricter language regarding FAA's strict adherence, and especially SFO's strict adherence to specific pathways. At night, for example, they have the night pathway, which is more preferential for noise effects in these community areas. So I'd like to see kind of that language be placed into this document as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I just to clarify, we had discussed line 99 earlier in the meeting, and we are adding some language. But thank you for your comments. Okay, anyone else? Thank you. Member Blunt.
I just want to go back to address Aaron Macias's comment, and I understand it's really probably our responsibility to communicate, you know, the ability to comment on this FAA document to our communities. Again, new people are still struggling with the language and trying to understand to be able to communicate efficiently and accurately, and the public even more so. So I would like to ask about the Noise 101, and not just for educating us, but if this is a video recording, if we cannot share that earlier with our communities so that we can work with our communities to write our own letters that are specific to, you know, the issues that we face. That would really be helpful. And we're coming up, I mean, we were told May or June, and we're already June now, and it's not scheduled. And we only have until the end of July, so I would really appreciate having that information.
Okay, we will have that forthcoming. I think we're at the final stages for that to be coming up. It's coming out in my next chairman comments. I will definitely provide you that. It's basically set for June 20th at 12 noon, and you will be getting emails from staff regarding that. But we're done. The date has been set, and it's coming very soon.
And if I could comment?
Sure.
Just so you know, after that initial broadcast is done with the members, that will be posted on the website, and you are encouraged to please ask your residents to sit down and gather with their friends and watch it themselves. We would love to see educated, get them all done.
So it took longer than what we anticipated because there's so many other stakeholders in this that they needed to be on, and scheduling as well as the videotaping. But I think the final product you're gonna see is gonna be very helpful and educational. Okay. With that, then I will definitely entertain a motion to adopt the draft comments and also to incorporate all the comments that were taken by Kathleen, as I think you have enough detailed in there, and we're also gonna be reviewing the video. But also we wanna, additionally, we wanna give staff the ability to wordsmith the document, and this is gonna be reviewed by the executive committee, the vice chair and myself. We'll make sure everything got captured as we all agreed on, and we will, again, because of the constraints in time, we're not gonna have the opportunity to bring it back to this body, but we will be sending it to the FAA on time for it to be considered.
I'd make that motion.
Second.
Thank you, Member O'Connor, for the motion, and Member Ortiz for the second. I think on this one, I would like to have a roll call just to make sure we capture everybody. Sorry, caught you off guard.
Color-coded, everything's color-coded. Okay. City and County of San Francisco Board of Supervisors. City and County of San Francisco Mayor's Office. City and County of San Francisco Airport Commission.
Aye.
San Mateo County Board of Supervisors.
Aye.
SeaCAC Land Use Commission. Town of Atherton.
Aye.
City of Belmont.
Aye.
City of Brisbane.
Aye.
City of Burlingame.
Aye.
Town of Colma.
Aye.
City of Daly City. City of East Palo Alto.
Yes.
City of Foster City.
Yes.
City of Half Moon Bay. Town of Hillsborough,
Yes.
City of Menlo Park, City of Millbrae,
Aye.
City of Pacifica,
Yes.
Town of Portola Valley, excuse me, City of Redwood City,
Yes.
City of San Bruno,
Aye.
City of San Carlos,
Yes.
City of San Mateo, City of South San Francisco, Town of Woodside. Unanimous for all present.
Okay, thank you all. It's really been a very valuable discussion. Thank you, Kathleen. This document's really, the timing and how much time we had to get this going was short, given how comprehensive this is and how important it is. But Kathleen, thank you for all the hard work that you had put, as well as Jean for being with us and participating in this, and also all your insight when you answered our questions and all the valuable information that you provided us. We could not have done it without both of you, and Angela also coordinating and being present and working with us on all this. Vice Chair Al Royce, thank you for all your help. Thank you all again for doing this, and hopefully this will get us, our recommendation will have some traction, and we'll see some changes. Okay, with that, Ms. Montes, I think at this point, would you mind sharing the list of the attendees that we have with us on there? And I'm gonna go ahead and move to item number 4, which is the chairman update. Two items I have, actually 3 items I have for you. The FBC Roundtable Conflict of Interest Code. Just a reminder that the FBPC is still in its final review of the Conflict of Interest Code. We expect the first set of Form 700s sometime soon, though the exact date will depend on when we get the final approval from FBPC. Deputy County Counsel Lauren Carroll will inform us as soon as she knows the due date. Links to the FBPC resources are located at sforoundtable.org website under resources, then California Fair Political Practices Commission. The August roundtable meeting agenda will contain the 23 to 24 proposed budget and the proposed work plan, so be on the lookout for that. And again, regarding Noise 101, the date has been set, and I just got notified today that it has been set June 20th at 12 noon, and staff will email details in the next few days. And similar to also as to what we have talked about, please not only would you be present, and I encourage all of you to be here, but also members of the public will see it. Jean, thank you so much for being with us. I know you have a plane to catch at 11. I apologize for holding you this long. Hopefully you do not miss your flight, but thank you again for being with us. Really appreciate it. Okay, so that's my report. Moving on to item number 5, the airport director update. Mr. Cetera.
Sure, thank you, Chair. A couple things to update, and then I'll turn it over to Bert. First is we hit our 70,000 outbound passenger threshold in May, and that was our largest enplanement load since pre-COVID. We finished the month of May at about 89% of our pre-COVID levels. Memorial Day weekend was 91%. And then flight operations in May were 86%. So I've talked about that difference between operations and passenger traffic. That trend is narrowing, where aircraft operations are catching up with passenger enplanements. Runway closure, we did complete our one left repaving project successfully and ahead of schedule, and just thanks to the communities that saw a greater impact and for their patience with us as we finish that work. I will turn it over to Bert now for his noise report.
Thank you, Director Sutero. Let's go ahead and trigger the screen share. Okay, so with the noise insulation program, I just wanted to highlight a few items real quick. As far as the repair replacement initiative, budgeted at $4.85 million. The Second Chance initiative budgeted at $9.3 million. the expanded eligibility initiative at 12 million. We're seeing relatively high satisfaction rates, the programs as they're going through, also the number of homes. The forecast budget for the SFO and grant funding we're looking at for the repair replacement, approximately 180 homes, $10 million. And this is going forward in the 2023-2026 time frame. And the second chance, 44 homes, 9.3 million, and then under the expanded eligibility, we're looking at much higher figures, if I can actually move this out of the way, 410 homes, $62 million. Also, just the summary here of those three figures at the bottom is something that we should focus on going forward. The noise office website has been updated. The answers for the GBAS, we're in process of working those, so we'll have those up here shortly. We just had to get all our parties together to answer those for us. And also we had the recent TWG that we need to add to that. I wanted to report quickly on the tracking of flights for April and May on the night hush. So we're looking at April here on the left, May on the right. You can see with the runway 1 closures, there are no operations off runway 1. Till we get into May, we have a few, and so that was exhibited there. People will ask what was going on with these flights over the city, both from April and May for Oakland and SFO. Most of the SFO ones that were vertical lines are life flights, medical transports going out. And if I remember right, my numbers were 16 in April, 15 in May. And so that was contributing to the higher figures there. The another way we were tracking it, we were looking more numbers by procedure. So I will leave this briefly with you and then let you delve into it more on your own. But all in all, better for SFO. Oakland tend to fall by the wayside a bit, and we're working with that now. We primarily were focusing on SFO because, well, it is our business to do that. We're now asking questions of the Oakland flights, and so going forward with that. Through the chair, any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Ganong. Thank you, Mr. Sotero. Any questions on the airport report? Seeing none, thank you very much. Appreciate your patience and hanging in there. Now moving on to item number 6, FAA Introduction, and I see with us Ms. Fabi Garcia and Mr. Joe Burt. Welcome. Who is gonna be doing the introduction? Ms. Fabi, please go ahead.
Yes, hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us. A lot of good discussion that we heard here today. Joe, Burt, Moy Fairton, and myself have been online listening throughout the entire conversation. So again, just really good input. I wanted to take a moment to introduce Moy Fair. She is our new Community Engagement Officer. And I know we're kind of running late, but if it's okay, I'd just like for her to say hello to the group and just say a few words. So, Moy Fair.
Thank you for the nice introduction. My name is Moy Fair, last name is Chen, and I look forward to working with everyone.
Thank you. Welcome. We look forward to working with you as well.
Thank you. And then the last thing I'll just mention, you did allude or mention that a copy of the letter would be sent to Raquel Gervin. So as you all know, Raquel has returned to the region, and we're just excited to have her back. So thank you, and I appreciate the time.
Thank you for being with us, and we are also great to see you, and we're excited to hear that Ms. Gervin is back from her leave of absence. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. Okay, moving to Item number 7, subcommittee updates. Due to weather-related meetings postponed earlier in the year, several subcommittees had to schedule realignment, and we only had one subcommittee meeting since the last roundtable meeting, and that was a technical working group. We had a productive meeting, and I was pleased that we were able to devote almost the entire meeting to editorial deep dive by Paul Hanna, who is a GBAS consultant, as you know, into the informative detail found in the GBAS Community Flight Procedure Packages, CFPP. I want to reiterate, and I want to really emphasize how important, how helpful that is for all of us to view that video. The video is available on the website. I found it extremely helpful to understand those community flight procedures updates that's happening, and Paul really dove deep into that. It's very informative. We're talking about Noise 101, as good as that is, and I think for what we will be dealing with GBAS, I implore all of you to really go and watch that video. And if you have any questions after that, come back to the next meeting when Paul with us. Definitely ask the questions. So thanks to the SFO for making Paul available. That was really helpful. Thank you. And now I'm going to go ahead and move on to public comments on items that presentation 4, 5, 6, and 7. Ms. Montes, do we have anyone with us from the public?
Thank you, Chairman Hindi. And as a reminder, you may use the raise hand feature if you are calling through Zoom to speak on items 4 through 7. But we do not have any virtual hands raised, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Well, we're coming to item number 8, which is member communication and announcement. And if anyone would like to have any comments, Member Schneider?
On the good news side, Millbury will be hosting our first Juneteenth event. It'll be a week from Saturday. Everyone is please come and join us. On the other side, I attended the San Francisco Planning Commission meeting June 1st, where they approved unanimously the final EIR for the SFO Shoreline Protection Plan. That is going to trigger some activity here in Millbrae. In that plan, it includes filling in 5 acres of mud flats near Millbrae. It includes building, if I heard correctly, 9-foot to 12 or 15-foot berms or walls around the airport, not including Reach 16, which is the one that would run from San Bruno and Millbrae along 101. But to me, in my review of the 500-page plus EIR, the noise analysis did not include low-frequency noise. They specifically commented that they don't have to because it's not in the FAA guidelines. And in addition, they don't have to pay attention to, for example, Millbrae's specific plan 2040, which was approved in December, because they are exempt from having to look at local government specific plans. So Millbrae will be having at least 1, if not 2 meetings, hopefully public, before we go into closed door session. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Member Lopez.
Thank you. Inspired by Member Schneider's comment, I just want to invite you all, excuse me, the City of East Palo Alto will be having its 40th anniversary of incorporation. It'll be at the end of this month on June 30th, also my dad's birthday, so kind of a double whammy. And it'll be June 30th to July 1st. Really historic, talking about coming to the table. We came to the table most recently a few months ago to the SFO, so we would be honored to see all your wonderful faces there, so to celebrate with us. Thank you.
Okay, great. Anyone else? Well, that brings us to the conclusion of our meeting. Thank you all. We are an hour behind, but thank you all for being here. I appreciate you. Thank you. Meeting is adjourned.